Chapter 50-50. Wan Dao Jianzun. Only one line from Jianxian is his current situation. Seeing all eyes converging on him, Chen Qing scratched his head and smirked. About 10,000 years ago, I had understood my own fairy style, but I am afraid that there is still a line of distance from Dian fairyland. This line of separation will probably have troubled me for a long time. Jian Wushuang heard the words. Can't even those imperial-grade pills help you break through? Chen Qing said. I have tried several times, but most of them have little effect. Although the D-pin pill is powerful enough to break through the shackles, it seems that there is some obstacle to making a breakthrough, which is very strange. Jian Wushuang didn't speak but thought. Although he had realized the immortal style early, but due to his own reasons, he could not perceive the realm of cultivation leading to Dian immortal. At the same time, he also thought that there was something wrong with the scarcity of Dian immortals in this big division. Could it be that the upward road has been blocked? Then Jian Wushuang looked at Chen Xiu and the others. The result was soon obtained. In addition to Chen Qing, Chen Xiu has also mastered his own fairy style. Fengshan had already realized the immortal style, although Cui Jing and Wei Liujia had not yet, but it was only a matter of time. This is already a force that cannot be underestimated. Even if it is some super universe in the big division domain, it may be difficult to fight. Jian Wushuang sighed slightly. After thousands of years of development, they have all grown up. Although there is still a distance from Dian immortal, they are already enough to gain a foothold in the big division. Seeing that the atmosphere was a little low, Cui Jing smiled and said, Don't talk about it. Brother Jian is only coming back, and our brothers will pick up the dust for you first. As soon as this remark came out, Chen Qing and the others clamored. Brother Sword, the good wine I hid is waiting for today. Let's not get drunk or return today. Yes, I haven't seen each other for nearly 20,000 years. Let's not get drunk today. Never get drunk or return. Several sacred men directly clamped Jian Wushuang and almost lifted him up. And Jian Wushuang also smiled. After all, it took 10,000 years to get together, and it was already a long time. However, at this moment, a slightly cold voice came from the depths of the temple. Don't drink, other things are free. Jian Wushuang shrugged, and then signaled that he was still recovering from a serious illness. Chen Qing and the others looked at each other, grinned, and then grabbed him and rushed directly to Wei Liujia's gazing pavilion. Stargazing pavilion. It was a dome pavilion that Wei Liujia started to create after Jian Wushuang disappeared. It is more appropriate to say that it is a dome tower than it is to say that it is a small space that is large enough to hold everything. The stargazing pavilion was built by Wei Liujia's heart, and it is close to Xiaogushan, like a corona. And thanks to the blessings of Chen Qing and others, ordinary external forces can't forcibly break in at all. It is a top-secret place. And right now in this stargazing pavilion, 6 evangelists gathered. Come, my wine is my favorite collection. I will never take it out during the normal season, but now is the best time. Above the eaves of the Guanqing pavilion, 6 Yangtzeans sat on the eaves at will, looking far away, full of distant rivers and waters. With a meaningful smile on his face, Chen Qing took out a pot of fine wine from his waist. Error-free novel. Although the hip flask is small, you can feel it when you start it, and it is no less than 10,000 caddies. Jian Wushuang didn't doubt that he was there. He raised his head and took a sip of the liquor, and his expression became weird. Even after nearly 20,000 years, he still tasted the liquor in the pot in one sip, which was exactly the same as the chewing wine he had encountered before. That was an interesting event in a mortal universe that he and Chen Qing passed through when they first rushed to the North Tiangxianzhu of young Master Mo. The so-called chewing wine is to chew the koji in the mouth of a beauty, make it ferment, and then form a unique and sweet wine. If it weren't for Jian Wushuang to know the doorway, then the liquor in this hand could indeed be called a fine wine, and it was comparable to Xinjiu. However, he happened to know the strangeness of this, so he didn't dare to take a second sip. At the same time, what made Jian Wushuang dumbfounded was that after nearly 20,000 years, the mortal universe may not know how many reincarnations have gone through, and Chen Qing still has so many chewing wines. Watching Chuanxiu, Cui Jing and the others were all drinking. Jian Wushuang hadn't fully recovered from his injuries because of the excuse, so he could not drink, so he flashed aside. Standing on the roof of the star-gazing pavilion, looking at the distant rivers and rivers in the distance, he was extremely happy. This side of the small world, except for the absence of spiritual aura, the rest are extremely suitable for practicing enlightenment. Jian Wushuang has even decided to sit here for a while. The clouds are rolling and the sun is bright. But at this moment, Jian Wushuang's eyes were quietly sharp for a moment. His gaze was steep from the big sun in the clouds. The sun is bright and emits a soft color. But at the edge of the big sun, it exudes a slight reddish color, which is extremely strange. This light red color does not belong to generative power, and it has a certain power to confuse and cannibalize the state of mind. Although it is extremely small, it still makes Jian Wushuang aware of it for the first time. He thought for a moment, then waved his hand to dissuade Chen Qing and the others who were still drinking. Have you found anything? Following Jian Wushuang's fingers, Chen Qing, Chen Xiu and others all looked at the big sun above the sky. Soon their faces became weird. Tens of thousands of years of fighting, blood seas running, so that they are no longer comparable to ordinary celestial development. Naturally, their exploration of crises is far beyond ordinary celestial development. Chen Qing first came back to his senses and looked at Wei Liujia. Liujia, this is your realm. You won't be targeted by anyone, right? Wei Liujia looked blank. No, I haven't been out for nearly 20,000 years, except for helping the Eternal Unparalleled. Then what's going on with this vision? Fengshan asked in confusion, rubbing his chin. Wei Liujia knew that it was not easy. Hurriedly started to play the star chessboard on the top of the Guanxing pavilion. One after another, the chess was settled, and the whole chessboard was shaking uneasily. Wei Liujia's complexion became increasingly ugly. Above the sky, the big sun was already covered by a kind of light red, bloodshot like a spider web. It's not good, it's eternally unparalleled. Wei Liujia suddenly raised his head. His complexion changed drastically. Fucking, there are still unrestricted daring to make unparalleled ideas now. Chen Qing burst out, already furious to the extreme. Let's go. Chen Xiu let out a low cry, ready to rush to help. Wait a minute. Jian Wushuang stopped them and said with a slight smile. I will go and take a look with you. For the convenience of reading next time, you can click favorites below to record the reading record of this time. Chapter 50-54? Dark Night is coming. And you can see it next time you open the bookshelf. If you like Sword Sovereign of 10,000 Ways, please recommend this book to your friends, QQ, blog, WeChat, etc. Thank you for your support. Chapter 50-51. The void shattered and the stars returned. Everything is in silence. The 6 bodies, like meteors, shuttled through the void galloping forward. The leaders are Chen Qing and Chen Xiu. Damn thing, what is this? Chen Qing cursed with a gloomy expression. I saw that the more we moved forward, the more fragmented the void became, as if we had experienced an unprecedented battle. As far as the eye can see, they are all fragmented, and on the edge of the void crack, there is a depressive atmosphere flowing. That kind of breath was dark red, like a river of blood, unable to speak. Let me catch it, cramp and peel it, and bury it under the temple as a cornerstone. Cui Jing said fiercely, killing in the depths of his eyes. I hope eternal warriors will hold on for a while. Chen Xiu was a little worried. The next moment, a weak wave swept from the depths of the void. Chen Qing stretched out his hand to cover it, directly restrained the weak fluctuation, and then dragged it over. Gu, the ancient pavilion of Guhai City? Seeing the figure that looked like a blood gourd in his hand, Chen Qing was completely shocked to the point of indescribable. Gu Guting? How could he make it like this? Cui Jingxiu stepped forward, and after seeing that it was Gu Ting, he was equally shocked. It looks like it should have been intercepted halfway. Chen Xiu frowned. Wei Liujia thought. I wonder if it will be Shang Juanzong. Look at him in large numbers and small ones, you see how I crushed them into powder. Fengshan slammed his fists, shouting shockingly. At this time, Guting, the son of Geheiqing, who was being carried by Chen Qing, woke up from his coma. As soon as he saw Chen Qing and the others, he showed the look of the rest of his life, and his eyes were gloomy. Chun, Master Chen, the pills have been taken away, and all the elders of my ancient sea city have also fallen. Upon hearing this, Chen Qing immediately sank and asked, "Who did this? How about Wanggu Wushuang auction house?" "Yes, it's Shang Juanzong Qin Tua." Gu Ting gritted his teeth and said bitterly, "He has already rushed over here." Chen Qing was furious, and Yanli surged, "Damn, this guy is looking for death." But Chuanxiu, who has always been extremely quiet, looked at Gu Ting and said indifferently, "Did you attract him?" Gu Ting trembled, shock flashed in his eyes, and finally he said, "Master Chun, we were intercepted and killed by Shang Zhenzong midway, and we were not able to return to the sky. Only if we escape back to Eternal Warriors can we have a ray of life. So far we have escaped here. I am the only one left." Chun Xiu interrupted with a wave of his hand, and then said, "This matter, Yugu Haiqing will give an account in the future. What we need to do now is to obliterate Qin Tua." Unparalleled. At this moment, the big sun above the sky has overturned, and was replaced by a huge blood moon. The void is shattered, and several heavens have been destroyed, and the eternal unparalleled auction house built on a heavenly plane was already on the verge of destruction. A dark river of blood tore the earth, rushing wildly, swallowing all visible objects. The plane was shattering, and the behemoth at the center of the heavenly plane, the Eternal Warrior, was now surrounded by a river of dark blood. With Qingling as the leader, nearly 10 Yangxians stationed here are resisting bitterly. She had just been promoted to the Immortal, and her realm was not yet stable, so it was too difficult to bear such a terrifying shock. But she never stepped back, releasing her strength and resisting bitterly. What is even more frightening is that Qingling doesn't know who the enemy is, because this kind of heaven and earth vision appears almost instantaneously, and then everything becomes passive. The dark river of blood rushed freely, turning into blood dragons that shook the sky and the earth, rushing towards the heaven of the eternal unparalleled auction house. Damn, what are these things? Who would use this moment to move hands? Qingling gritted her teeth, already extremely angry. Beside her, a middle-aged Yanxian also gritted his teeth and resisted. "Fairy Qingling, you go first, and quickly invite Master Chun and the others to come over. We will stand here for a while." "Impossible, I'm leaving, I can't resist it anymore." Qingling shook her head resolutely. "But if this continues, we must not be able to hold it." The middle-aged Yanxian couldn't help but said. The long sword in his hand had been concealed by the dark blood stains, and the power was gone. "That can't be retired," Qingling said quietly. Thousands of azure green horses burst out of her palm, turning into the strongest enchantment, covering the entire eternal unparalleled palace. Roar! There was a loud and thorough bang that tore through the chaos and darkness. The endless river of blood gushes from the depths of the earth, and it continues to condense into a billion-meter-long snake. The thick blood dripped from the gaps in every scale. A pair of blood pupils, vertical pupils shining like a blood sun. It is too huge. Even though the eternal unparalleled temple, it is a bit small in front of it. The order collapses, the universe is destroyed, everything is in chaos. At this moment, the Eternal Warrior's Heaven Palace is like Yi Guizhou, struggling to support it, and it may capsize at any time. Of the nearly 10 Yanxian who originally stationed here, 3 have already died. Facing the flood snake composed of a dark river of blood, all Yanxian faces were ashes. As long as one round of the blood river hits, the Temple of Heaven will be unprotected. "I'm afraid they can't resist." The middle-aged Yanxian bit her teeth and looked at Qingling on the side, and he wanted to send her out of here. But the next moment, the sky of chaos trembles suddenly, followed by a burst of loud shouts. All Yanxian's eyes converged on the sky. There, a sacred mountain-like figure, like the afterglow of the setting sun, slammed heavily on the giant head of the snake. Boom! The blood burst out, and there was an incomparable dying explosion. The blood river flood snake roared wildly. Its entire head was almost penetrated, and one of its vertical pupil snake eyes was broken. The huge body weighed heavily in the river of blood. "Quickly enter the hall!" Qingling yelled, and the few remaining Yanxian all entered the hall quickly, and then closed the gate of heaven. The blood river roared, and the plain of collapsed. The blood river flood snake that was pierced through its head fell heavily into the blood river, rolling up billions of blood waves, covering the sky and the sun. I think it is something. It turns out to be a chopstick too. Fengshan shook his figure, shaking off the blood on his shoulders and spitting in disdain. But in this moment, Chen Qing's scream suddenly resounded. Fengshan, go back! Ah! Fengshan was puzzled, and was about to speak, but was shocked to realize that a huge flood snake had condensed in the river of blood below him. It opened the mouth of blood that swallowed the sky, and spit out an endless river of blood at Fengshan. Because this was so fast, Fengshan was already swallowed when Chen Qing and others arrived. As far as I can see, even the heavenly temple of the unparalleled auction house is unavoidable to sink into a river of blood. Chapter 50-52. Chen Qing halted his feet, flared his 5 fingers, and shot out 10,000 ray of light in an instant. Huameng is like the sharpest arrow, tearing through the void, rushing towards the blood river snake. Puff puff. The endless blood mist exploded, and the blood river flood snake opened its mouth and roared. With this roar, Fengshan's sacred mountain-like figure escaped from the huge mouth embarrassedly. Mother, it's dangerous. Fengshan's face was pale, with a big taboo. What is this? Chen Qing and the others also arrived, staring at the river of blood beneath them, and they all had a bad feeling. Cui Jing held the Xian stick in his hand and slapped his lips and said, I didn't let Brother Jian come, is it a bit? It's okay. Let's see how I demolish this place. Fengshan rubbed his hands and rushed down with a low growl. Chen Qing and Cui Jing also urged their figures and rolled down together. Chen Qiu stared at the restored ancient pavilion, this river of blood. This blood river is the incarnation of Qin Tua. Gu Ting confirmed without hesitation. He was the incarnation of the blood river before and swallowed all the elders in my ancient sea city. Hearing the words, Wei Liujia touched his chin. It shouldn't be. From the previous performance, Shang Juanzong seems quite magnificent. Right now this blood river seems to be quite inconsistent with their performance. Chen Qiu glanced at him, then said quietly, Often the more magnificent the surface, the more unbearable it is behind the back. Don't be fooled by the appearance. It makes sense, then let's. To protect eternal warriors with all your strength, and to cut the roots. Boom! Gathering Chen Qing, Cui Jing, Chen Qiu, and Wei Liujia with the full blow of the 4 immortals. The billions of blood sea snakes were directly smashed into pieces, cut off the spirit, and fell miserably into the tossing blood. In the sea of blood dissipated, revealing the eternal unparalleled temple still standing. But this situation only existed for a moment, and the endless blood sea spread again. This time, it was even crazier. Countless snakes writhed out of the sea of blood and attacked the temple. At the same time, the surface of the sea of blood shook layers of ripples, and a dark red figure walked out of it. His immortal body was floating with unimaginable blood, as if he was wearing a layer of blood armor. Although this figure has changed greatly, he can still be recognized at a glance. He is Lord Shangju and Qin Tua. At this moment, he is simply different from the previous bidding in the auction house. Bloodthirsty, treacherous, and power-full of some unknown restrictions, terrifying to the extreme. Stepped out of the blood sea, and approached Chen Qing and others. They all noticed the abnormal movement behind them, and then saw this scene. Qin Tua, why did you become such a ghost? Cui Jing frowned. Obviously he was a bit disgusted with Qin Tua's impression. If there is weirdness, be careful, Chen Qingming said, and then tentatively released the strength training. The violent Yanlipi stabs Qin Tua directly, and he cannot avoid it. But then, he quietly raised his palm and waved, and a round of blood mirror appeared in front of him immediately, completely absorbing Chen Qing's strength. Then the blood mirror shook, and unexpectedly shot Chen Qing's previous strength intact, and its power doubled. Chen Qing's brows twitched heavily, and he drew out the real sword from his waist, and cut off all the strength training. This guy is really weird, so be careful, he said condensely. Hey, Junior of Shang Juanzong, do you really intend to be an enemy of Wangu Wushuang? Cui Jing frowned and shouted coldly. Qin Tua, who was already wrapped in a sea of blood, showed a quirky curve at the corner of his mouth. What are you Wushuang like? You dare to talk like this? Well, I will kill you all today. As Qin Tua's voice fell, the endless sea of blood rolled up billions of dust and slapped Chen Qing and others. How little bugs! Fengshan shouted, and then the fairy body doubled in size and was covered by the meaning of red and yellow, like a real sacred mountain, blasting a sea of blood and dust. Rumble. Fengshan's figure only existed for a moment, and when he touched the sea of dust, it was swallowed and absorbed. Chen Qing's face changed slightly, and she shouted without thinking. Go back, there is a problem here. You can't retreat, behind is the Eternal Warrior's Temple, Chuanxiu said in a deep voice. Fengshan is also in a dangerous situation, let alone retreat. Then dash out a road. Cui Jing held a profound stick and rushed forward without any hesitation. The sea of blood roared and went to the center. With Chen Qing as the leader, Chuanxiu, Cui Jing and Wei Liujia all brazenly rushed to the sweeping sea of blood. The four Yangtzeans' full blows opened a crack without any suspense. But it was not Qin Tua that greeted them, but a world that seemed to be infiltrated with blood, and everything was blood red. Here, what place is it? Cui Jing said uncertainly. I'm afraid we have entered Qin Tua's trap. Chen Xiu frowned. Wei Lijia's eyes lit up. Fengshan is ahead. Following his fingers, Fengshan, like a sacred mountain, was lying in the blood at this moment, not knowing his life or death. Wei Liujia stopped talking and went straight to help. Liujia, don't go, Chen Xiu said anxiously, but it was still a moment late. The sudden change occurred, and Fengshan, who was still lying in the bloodstain of life and death, suddenly disappeared. Instead, blood lines with the thickness of fingers protruded from the ground and suddenly clung to Wei Lijia's fairy body. In an instant, he was pulled directly into the river of blood and disappeared completely. Since all this was completed in a flash, it was too late when they wanted to help. Chen Qing took a step forward and roared angrily. Damn chopsticks, hand them over, otherwise you will count as one, and none of them will survive. A chuckle, resounding in this blood-red world without any warning, with a bit of mockery. Really noisy, you guys today. You reading www.akanshu.com has a count of one, you can't live. Qin Tua's figure wrapped in the river of blood quietly condensed, like a blood day, hung high above the sky bloody. The endless blood beam came down, quickly swallowing all the power. With his arms raised flat, blood-colored diamond mirrors appeared all over him. The figures and faces of Chen Qing, Chen Xiu, and Cui Jing are reflected in each diamond mirror, which is extremely curious. Chen Xiu's complexion changed slightly, and then he seemed to realize something, and hurriedly looked at his fairy body. I saw that the fairy body had already been covered with a faint blood mist, and as time passed, it gradually solidified. This situation also appeared in Chen Qing and Cui Jing. Chen Xiu said with a solemn expression. Did you feel that the power in your body is passing by? Chen Qing and Cui Jing nodded at the same time, then looked at Qin Tua in the void together. Chapter 50-53. There is no doubt that all the changes in their immortal body were caused by Qin Tua. The has increased, almost solidified. Damn it, could it be the mirrors? Cui Jing gasped slightly. With the rapid passing of Yanli, the blood armor on their immortal body became more and more solid. If you wait any longer, the consequences can be imagined. At this moment, the blood-colored diamond mirror surrounding Qin Tua's body was no less than 100,000 faces. Every diamond mirror reflected the faces of Chen Qing, Chen Xiu, and Cui Jing, and the blood flowing in them made their faces strange and abnormal. Pretend to be A and play a ghost. Chen Qing's face was cold, and then with a wave of his arm, the real sword in his hand rushed out. In an instant, Jianhua was shocked and swept across the sky. The pure sword intent of nearly 10,000 daos all slashed towards Qin Tua, as well as the diamond mirror around him. This sword, blended with Chen Qing's immortal style, is a sword of the strongest. Even if it is a fairy of the same realm, it must avoid its edge. But Qin Tua didn't dodge. He still hung up in the void like a day, and then raised his arms. 100,000 diamond mirrors were like tides, and the cover that came forward pressed against Chen Qing's fairy sword. 100,000 diamond mirrors, to differentiate an impact. But these are not enough for Xianshi. It was almost a single face, with 100,000 diamond mirrors directly shattered into tens of thousands. Like a rain of blood from the sky, the diamond mirror shattered and fell into the sky. Chen Qing's immortal style was too overbearing. 100,000-faced blood-colored diamond mirror could not stop it. It was all crushed and disappeared. Then, all the sword intent stabbed Qin Tua unabated. As long as this immortal style is in the middle, Chen Qing is completely sure to obliterate it. But then a treacherous scene appeared. I saw that when the infinite sword intended to stab Qin Tua, it was directly swallowed and absorbed. After falling into a dead silence for a short time, Qin Tuasan sneered and shook his arms violently, bursting out the infinite sword intent that had been swallowed in an instant. Chen Qing, Chen Xiu, and Cui Jing were all shocked, and quickly released their respective powers to resist. Rumble. Every sword intent was far better than before, and even Chen Qing almost couldn't support it. The sword light that covered the sky finally dissipated, and Chen Qing pulled down the battered enchantment and fought against Qin Tua. Chen Xiu and Cui Jing also set off one after another, releasing their respective strengths and encircling them together. I can't help myself. Qin Tua smiled sullenly. The next moment his whole body directly reflected the ray of blood, and he slammed into Chen Qing. Boom! The giant sound was so loud, the whole blood-colored world trembled. Blood is overflowing, spilling into the void. The three Yangtzean's full blows were actually intercepted by Qin Tua himself, without even taking a step back. This is too shocking. Chen Qing frowned slightly, and he realized that the situation was not simple. The changes caused by all this have long been beyond imagination, and Qin Tua is definitely more terrifying than he imagined. Immediately afterwards, Qin Tua gave a deep smile and slammed both fists at Chen Qing. Chen Qing relieved his strength with his palm, but was shocked to realize that when his strength touched him, it was like being swamped and swallowed quickly. Thousands of punches in a flash, each of them hit Chen Qing, Chuanxiu, and Cui Jing's immortal body heavily. Wow! They flew out and plunged heavily into the river of blood. However, this is only the beginning. Above the void, Qin Tua was almost crazy. His clothes all over his body were shattered, his chest, the endless power surging out, and then turned into snakes, rushing into the river of blood. The blood river rolled up billions of blood waves, almost enveloping the entire scarlet world. With blood in the sky, Qin Tua's face was gloomy, and his eyes were like two rounds of blood mirrors, exuding a strange, inexplicable, and breathtaking power. This blood-colored world, between illusion and reality, was facilitated by Qin Tua, and even Xianxian, who mastered the immortal style, and was only one step away from Dianxian, could not escape. The only way to enter this world is death. Here, he is the supreme being who controls everything. Chen Qing, Chen Xiu, and Cui Jing were floating in the bleeding river at the same time, but they couldn't break free at all. Blood snakes entangled the fairy body, madly dragging them into the blood river. Damn thing! What is this guy's background? How can I repay the grievances of blood and energy? Cui Jing struggled and gasped. Both Chen Qing and Chen Xiu struggled to resist, and could only barely protect themselves. This river of blood, and even this entire blood-colored world, are too weird. Their derivation power is fading fast, and they can't even make up for it. The arms were so tightly wound that they couldn't take the Emperor Pin pill that they carried with them. Chen Xingming looked at Qin Tua in the void, and then he let out a deep cry, and his whole body surged with extreme strength in an instant. Control the sky. Just like the collapse of a big day, a kind of extreme and pure power instantly swept across all fields. The blood snake wrapped around Chen Qing's body directly turned into powder. He broke free from the shackles, and then grabbed Chuanxiu and Cui Jing to get out of the sea of blood. This is Chen Qing's immortal style, his strongest blow. Under this blow, the entire blood mirror world trembles, and boundless cracks cover every corner. It's like a real mirror, about to shatter. But this situation only existed for a moment, and it was quickly repaired. Qin Tua sneered with sun, then rushed directly to Chen Qing. The blood burst, swept up from the wild, and then came down. Chen Qing, who was wrapped in the ultimate pure power, pushed Chen Xiu and Cui Jing far away, and greeted Qin Tua alone. Boom! At this moment it is as if thousands of stars burst. The immortal Yutian released by Chen Qing was so powerful that it almost instantly swallowed Qin Tua. The entire Scarlet World is on the verge of collapse. Chen Qing, Chen Xiu and Cui Jing yelled anxiously. They wanted to give aid, but they were repelled by the huge energy. This terrible fluctuation does not last long, only a few dozen interest times. With Chen Qing flying backwards and retreating, it was over. Cui Jing has quick eyes and quick hands, and hastily released Yanli to support Chen Qing, who was flying backwards. Divine blood was spilled. The immortal body was covered with scars, his eyes closed tightly, and he was obviously fainted. Qin Tua is dead. Looking at the blood mist in the void, Chuanxiu realized that things might not be that simple. As if to confirm his thoughts, in the void, the thick blood mist gathered again, and the limbs grew rapidly. Qin Tua didn't suffer any damage at all, and even his whole body became stronger and stronger. Chen Xiu and Cui Jing stepped back slowly, looking at him solemnly. This blood-colored world is too weird, making things completely out of the original scope. A little careless. I am afraid they will never escape today. The danger this time is far more swift and unpredictable than any one in 20,000 years. And what caused this result was only a fairy. Chapter 50-54. This is a big crisis. Chen Qing, Fengshan and Wei Liujia have all suffered. But Chuanqiu and Cui Jing are the only ones to support. Take care of Chen Qing, I will fight. After Cui Jing left this sentence, he rushed into the void resolutely. Facing Qin Tua, he tilted the 8-foot profound stick and rushed forward without hesitation. With the stick smashed, 100,000 Zhang Phantom was like a black dragon, shaking the sky and the earth. Qin Tua withdrew, raising his right hand, and suddenly condensed into a fist. In an instant, countless strands of blood-colored huamang rose from behind him, strangling the sky and the earth towards Cui Jing. OM. The meanings of blood red and black collided, and the shadow of the mysterious stick quickly shattered. But the blood color did not decrease, frantically strangling towards Cui Jing. Only in a moment, Cui Jing's figure was submerged in the torrent. Cui Jing. Chen Qiu was anxious, and he almost hugged Chen Qing into the river of blood in front of him. The entire chaotic sky was almost covered by a torrent of blood. Cui Jing was swallowed, and it was already difficult to escape. Qin Tua stood with his hands behind, and slowly came to the position where Cui Jing had stood before. In the next moment, the sudden change. The chaotic blood river was torn open a crack without any warning. Along with the blood river tearing apart, a powerful profound stick suddenly smashed out. Because this is happening too fast, even Qin Tua can't react. Boom! Unparalleled violence, bloodthirsty breath broke out completely. Under this stick, Qin Tua's entire right arm was smashed into pieces, turning into a handful of blood mist. Then, Cui Jing walked out of the torrent like a demon god. He was covered in blood, and he lifted the profound stick diagonally in his hand. Facing the retreating Qin Tua, he spit out a foam and said violently, "You are the same as an immortal, and you also have the qualifications to be rampant? Today I have to take out your immortal bones, even with broken cultivation base." The smashed arm quickly recovered. Qin Tua was furious. His arms emptied suddenly, and the endless stream of blood formed a shining mirror behind him. In the diamond mirror, an endless river of blood was reflected. Bah, just pretend to be a fool. Cui Jing spit out another mouthful of blood, and said grimly, "This diamond mirror is too vast, like a barrier connecting a super heavenly plane." Cui Jing stood in front of this diamond mirror, like a chestnut in the ocean. In the huge diamond mirror, the river of blood surged, and then a vertical pupil appeared with a certain bewitching power. "Cui Jing, go back." Chen Qiu noticed something was wrong and reminded him anxiously, but it was too late. Cui Jing stood still on the spot, as if he was drawn out of his spirit. His eyes lost his expression, and then he jumped into the diamond mirror, and was swallowed by the river of blood. Chen Qiu's face was pale. When there were 5 people, he was the only one left at the moment. This situation was too tragic. Fengshan, Wei Liujia, and Cui Jing are all missing, and Chen Qing has also passed out. In this whole treacherous world, he is the only one who has the power to fight. He waved his hand to release Yanli to hold Chen Qing in the void, and Chen Qiu stood in front of Qin Tua. "Hand over them all. Otherwise you will not be able to bear the consequences." Qin Tua, who was soaked in blood, sneered coldly. "You mobs no longer have the strength to fight, and are you still trying to make a profit? Really, are you so sure that we don't have the power to fight?" Chen Qiu said with a smile. Qin Tua didn't say anything. He was disgusted with Chunki's rhetorical question. Just when he was about to cover it with a palm, the entire scarlet world shook suddenly. The shock was so severe that it instantly collapsed the earth, and the blood flow countered. Qin Tua was shocked. His indifferent face was a little moved. The tremor of the entire scarlet world is due to external forces that cannot be ignored. However, Chen Qiu first stared nervously, and then a touch of joy appeared. He felt a familiar, domineering power. The originally dark sky began to shatter, and endless cracks twisted and swept across, almost covering the entire sky. The next moment, starting from the center of the crack, the entire sky collapsed and shattered in an instant, and the river of blood flowed backward. Appear to extreme force, pressing the blood river here. With the arrival of this sword-like figure, all blood qi dissipated, unable to enter him for hundreds of miles. The tooth-white robe fluttered in the wind, and the long black hair fluttered behind him, looking at Qin Tua with a majestic look. He only felt that his divine consciousness was suddenly hit hard, and he could not be beaten, and he almost fell directly. Qin Tua snorted, backed a few steps, and then a ray of blood overflowed from the corner of his mouth. The visitor was terrible, and it was no longer comparable to ordinary evangelists that it could be done in just one face. He looked at the figure in the tooth-white uniform, and fear flashed in his eyes. "Brother Jian," Chun Xiu shouted. Cui Jing and the others were all taken to unknown places by him. The person who came was Jian Wushuang. When he was about to come together before, he was forcibly pulled by Xiao Dijuan to take the medicine. So he didn't come with Chun Qing in time. But the current situation is far more severe than imagined. After listening to Chunkius' words, Jian Wushuang frowned and looked at Qin Tua, who was like a blood gourd. For some reason, he felt a strange sense of familiarity. But he was sure that he had never seen Qin Tua. "Hey, send them all back. I won't hold you accountable," Jian Wushuang said quietly, with unquestionable majesty, as if he was a notice, not a discussion. Qin Tua was startled, and then annoyed. "Send it back if you say you want it back? I'm afraid it's wishful thinking." Jian Wushuang was too lazy to spend his tongue, raising his hand and bending his fingers. In an instant, a pure and extreme sword aura rose up and down, slashing forward. This is an unstoppable sword energy. Even if Qin Tua reacts, he can only choose to resist. Chirp. Divine blood was spilled, and the sword energy almost cut Qin Tua into two. He snorted, and murderous intent appeared in his eyes, almost trying to break the fairy body, releasing endless blood. The blood qi transformed into a million diamond mirrors, surrounding Jian Wushuang from every direction. Watching this scene, Spring and Autumn was shocked. "Brother Jian, run away." However, Jian Wushuang did not evade. Instead, he looked at the million-faced diamond mirror with great interest. Qin Tua showed a cruel smile. No Yanxian could escape from him. This was self-confidence. But the next moment, great changes have taken place. Surrounded by a million-faced blood-colored diamond mirror, a blue column of blue light rose into the sky, directly clearing the blood mist. At the same time, a treasure figure covering the heaven and the earth appeared, and the colorful shadows fell on the heaven and the earth. Baoxiang opened his eyes, and indescribable majesty swallowed everything. The entire blood mirror world couldn't bear this energy and quickly collapsed. The millions of diamond mirrors quickly turned into powder, collapsed and dissipated like a tide. Qin Tua was shocked and hurried back, but it was already too late. Chapter 50-55. Under the pressure of Wushuang Baoxiang, all filth cannot exist. The millions of diamond mirrors were instantly emptied, and even the whole blood mirror world collapsed into nothingness. Qin Tua was not spared. He was shattered by Wushuang Baoxiang's eyes and turned into a powder. After all, he is nothing but a fairy. Even if he is only one step away from dying, he is still a fairy. How can he withstand Jian Wushuang's full blow? Everything turned into ashes and nothingness, including the river of blood that surrounded the eternal unparalleled temple. Qingling and the others opened the door of the temple, still very nervously searching for any crisis. Carrying Chen Qing's Chuanxiu, looking at the figure that was light and breezy from beginning to end, an uncontrollable excitement flashed in his eyes. Such a difficult battle was easily cracked by Jian Wushuang. This is enough to see that he has reached an unimaginable height in nearly 20,000 years after returning from the Sea of No Edge. In the spring and autumn at this moment, there is only excitement and happiness in my heart. But before the joy in his heart lasted long, he mentioned it again, because Qin Tua, who had been destroyed by Jian Wushuang's immortal body, had actually condensed again. "Brother Jian, be careful!" Chen Xiu shouted. Qin Tua gave a deep smile and slammed Jian Wushuang's back with a palm. The terrible blood rushed forward instantly and pierced Jian Wushuang without any hindrance. Like a stone thrown into the lake, there are ripples. His figure disappeared like a cloud of smoke, which was very strange. Qin Tua was startled. He realized what was wrong, and when he wanted to retreat, he realized that it was too late. Cold sweat gushed from his temples, and Qin Tua clearly felt a finger against his neck. After a moment, a soft sound struck him, and he felt his head dizzy, and then his head and body separated. Waving his hand to cut off Qin Tua's head, Jian Wushuang directly took his head and urged him to the front of the eternal Wushuang temple. "Sword, Lord, sword!" Qingling was shocked and lost her voice, and immediately realized her failure, and hurriedly lowered her head. Jian Wushuang nodded and smiled, then dropped Qin Tua's head in the middle of the square. "Release them back and I will spare your life." With only one head left, Qin Tua smiled slyly. "Do you think that if I eat it, will I vomit it out?" Jian Wushuang raised his brows. "Want to die?" "Of course I want to die, but no one can put my seat on." Without finishing a sentence, Jian Wushuang directly raised his foot and crushed Qin Tua's head. Chen Xiu was startled. "Brother Jian, kill him. I'm afraid Fengshan and the others. This is not his true fate, but just a shell." Jian Wushuang said. "Fengshan and the others should have been taken away by his true fate a long time ago." When Chen Xiu heard the words, he understood the meaning of the words. "You go to Xiaogudian and call that immortal Yen from some ancient sea city. He should know how to go." In the vast void, the four realms are moving forward quickly like the big sun and stars. They are all detached from the order, and they are all immortals. The leader is Jian Wushuang in white-toothed uniform. To his side are Chuanxiu, Chen Qing who has just awakened, and Guting, the son of Geheiqing. "Fucking this time I go to their nest, I will kill him first. No one can escape," Chen Qing said angrily, obviously still remembering the previous things. Chen Xiu also agrees very much. Since taking this opportunity to find the sect of Shangjuanzong, there is no better way than destroying the sect in a battle. But Gu Ting seemed a lot more nervous. He escaped from Qin Tua's hands, naturally knowing Qin Tua's terrifying strength. Therefore, when he saw that the Wangu Wushuang auction house only went to 3 yen xian, he couldn't help feeling a little absurd. You know, Shangjuanzong is also one of the top superpowers in the entire Deisai domain, and even Geheiqing must be a little afraid of existence. Just the number of immortals in the sect will never be less than 50. What's more, there are rumors that the sect master Shangjun is already quasi-Dian immortal. With such a terrifying strength, Wangu Wushuang only dispatched 3 immortal immortals. From Gu Ting's point of view, this is almost the same as sending death. His injury is only stable. If he goes straight to Juanzong, there is absolutely no possibility of surviving. For the sake of his own fate, Gu Ting finally said, "Several seniors, if we go straight to Shangjuanzong, would it be a bit too thin? Why don't I ask my ancestors for help?" Jian Wushuang smiled upon hearing the words. "No need. Immediately afterwards, Chen Qing waved his hand again. It's not necessary, if there are only a few of us. Even if you add your Guhai city to destroy Shangjuanzong, it is not easy. But it's different now. As long as there are sword brothers, even 10 Shangjuanzong are tied together. And it's definitely not enough to kill. Gu Ting's brow jumped, and he didn't know how to express his position. As the second in command of the eternal world, Chen Qing's words were obviously weighty, not to mention the presence of the top leader in spring and autumn, which invisibly increased credibility. But he still didn't believe it. He had to know that unless it was Dian Immortal, he could have the power to destroy an entire super-universe, and Chen Qing, Chuanxiu, and the mysterious man obviously did not reach Dian Immortal's level. This is undoubtedly a gamble. Gu Ting gritted his teeth, and didn't know what to do. It seems that he saw his worry. Jian Wushuang, who was walking forward with his hand, said in a low voice, "Just take us to find the location of Shangjuanzong. You won't need to visit by then, just leave." Gu Ting was startled, then bowed his head slightly embarrassed. The large division area developed by Zhen Wuyang is almost infinite, and it is a realm that gathered more than 10 former emperors. And the area is imaginable. However, after experiencing the Emperor's War in the Wangu era, the countless celestial planes in the realm have almost collapsed more than half. Even after infinite years, the cycle of the universe has not fully recovered. But even so, you reading www.akanshu.com, some universe planes still take over the new heavens Fukuzawa and become a super universe. And Shangjuanzong is naturally one of them. Under the guidance of Gu Ting, the heaven plane where Shangjuanzong was located quickly appeared in Jian Wushuang's eyes. The huge heavenly gate is built in the void, and is very magnificent. The fairy clouds are curled up, and the auspicious cranes are mingling. It is quite a super-sect aura. The word Shangjuan is embedded on the Tianmen, which is obviously where the Shangjuanzongmen is located. Jian Wushuang was still very indifferent, carrying his hands on his back, and moving forward leisurely. Chen Qing and Cui Jing followed closely, with undisguised murderous in their eyes. Gu Ting opened his mouth, but didn't say anything. He was struggling inside, wondering whether he should leave or stay. After a while, he gritted his teeth abruptly, made a decision, and then followed without looking back, and went straight to Shangjuanzong with Jian Wushuang. Chapter 50-56. The fairy clouds are curled up, and the auspicious mingling. This is a side of the land. Standing in the void is the Tianmen at the beginning of the Shengzhenzong portal. At this moment several top repairers are guarding. The fairy rhyme is flowing, and behind the Tianmen is a huge fairy formation. Stop, Hifang Yanxian. Our sect is not open to the outside world. Please move forward. The breeze swept, and a Ding Xiu stationed outside Tianmen stretched out his hand to block Jian Wushuang's path. Before Jian Wushuang could speak, Chen Qing directly slapped the top repairman thousands of feet away, and immediately opened the door of Shangjuanzong. Afterwards, Jian Wushuang stepped slowly into the Tianmen. Behind the Tianmen is not the heavenly plain of Shangjuanzong, but a huge and chaotic fairy formation. Pretending to be A and playing a ghost, it's definitely not a good bird. Chen Qing said in a deep voice, and directly waved out a powerful training. But when Yen Lipi Lian hit the fairy formation, he was easily absorbed and couldn't break it. I'm afraid I can't forcibly break here. The fairy formation has been set up, Chen Xiu said thoughtfully. As soon as his voice fell, Jian Wushuang directly raised his hand and easily tore the barrier on the immortal formation. Let's go. He motioned, and then stepped into the fairy formation. Earlier when he went to Demetian of Gongzi Jiao, Jian Wushuang had felt the mystery of teleporting the fairy formation. It was very good, and he could instantly go anywhere within the path of the fairy formation. The origin of the teleportation immortal array has long been untraceable, but it has completely flourished from the time of Zhenmiang. If you want to destroy the heavens in a vertical and horizontal manner, a large-scale dispatch of the eternal fairy is extremely important. And Zhen Wuyang also used the characteristic of the immortal formation to transmit, successfully destroying the heavens from one side to another. It is precisely because of this that even though endless years have passed, the role of the fairy formation is still retained in some super-universes. When they thought about it, they stood on the ground covered by a fairy cloud. This is Shangjuanzong. Why doesn't it look like a place where dirt is hidden? Chen Qing touched his chin and looked at Guting. At the moment, Gu Ting was extremely nervous. Well, this should be where Shangjuan sect is located. I also passed by with the elders of the clan hundreds of millions of years ago, and never visited this place. Don't worry, let's talk about it, Chen Qing said in a deep voice. At this time, Jian Wushuang said, don't do anything for the time being. If the Shangjuanzong is indeed a good and large party, let them go. If not, it's not too late to do it again. In spring and autumn, Chen Qingding nodded at the same time. The fairy clouds are curled up, the fairy mountains are towering, the endless green fairy trees are growing vigorously, and the primitive pavilions are like horned dragons, hibernating quietly in the fairy mountains. At this moment, it is in the morning dew, and some disciples have begun to breathe in the morning, practicing diligently in their respective dojos. Jian Wushuang walked forward with his hands down, and he didn't even look at these Shangjuanzong disciples. His goal was very clear, and he went straight to the hall of Shengzhenzong. Soon, the disciples of Shengzhenzong found the uninvited guests, and began to gather in the direction of the hall. The Great Hall of King Juanzong is located at the very center of the entire vast horizon plain, occupying the most powerful place. It was only a few dozen breaths of time before Jian Wushuang set foot on the main hall square. The square is magnificent. The hall is vast and magnificent to the extreme. At the very center of the square, there is a huge sundial, in which every direction corresponds to a star. Chen Qing stood directly on the sundial, yelling with halberd fingers, "Old song-bearded thief in the temple, get out of here!" As if boiling water rose sharply, the hall opened, and more than a dozen old men wearing ink robes walked out quickly, all in an unrelenting appearance. At a glance, Jian Wushuang knew that these old men were all immortals. A long-bearded old man looked bad. Where is the crumbly young man, dare to stand on the sundial? Don't you know how the death character is written? Chen Qing sneered disdainfully said, Why do you want to tell? The long-bearded old man was so angry that the ancient staff in his hand suddenly slammed, and in an instant a pure force rushed forward. Chen Qing directly raised his hand with a wave, and shattered the yanli that had hit him. Don't use the skill of Yehuzen to be embarrassing, so I won't kill you. Chen Qing roared angrily. Hand over Qin Tua, otherwise you will die. With huge sounds, all the elders and disciples took a step back, their expressions solemn. It was the long-bearded old man who stepped forward and said, Junior, Shangjuanzong is not the place where you wait for madness. It's still too late to walk, so as not to be hit hard. Let's go, of course, and return my 3 brothers first. Chen Qiu stepped forward and said in a condensed voice. The long-bearded old man trembled his brows. He obviously knew something, but he still said, I have never stepped out of the sect for millions of years. I don't know the whereabouts of your brother. I think there must be some misunderstanding. Old thief, dare you open your eyes and tell nonsense? Chen Qing smirked and slammed all the elders. The elders all reacted and hurriedly resisted. Chen Qing had already understood his own fairy style. Only a short distance from Dian Immortal, he was a quasi-Dian Immortal, and with a full blow, it was enough to make ordinary immortal unbearable. The 15 elders resisted with all their might before Chen Qing struck. The long-bearded old man almost stood unstable, and blood surged in the fairy body. Chen Qing shouted in a cold voice, Leave me away if you don't want to die. Today I'm here to beg for justice. If you persist in retreating, don't blame Lao Zi for destroying the clan. As soon as this statement came out, all Shangjuanzong disciples were in an uproar, and then quickly backed away. The face of the long-bearded old man changed several times, and finally he looked at the elder on the side and winked secretly. Then, the 2 elders quickly entered the temple. I think there must be some misunderstanding in this, please stop for a while. The long-bearded old man took a deep breath and said slowly. Chen Qing stopped talking, calm instead, and turned to look at Jian Wushuang, who looked calm. In front of the main hall, in the center of the square, there was a short silence. After a few breaths, Jian Wushuang moved, and he moved forward slowly. Gu Ting on the side brows. For some reason, every time he sees Jian Wushuang, he will involuntarily become nervous, as if he is staring into an unknown abyss, unable to explore. At the same time, Gu Ting's heart also has a faint expectation. What kind of existence is Jian Wushuang, who can make Wushuang's first and second in command willing to go with him? Soon, he saw an almost unimaginable scene. Jian Wushuang was alone, facing more than a dozen Shangjuanzong elders, just raised his hand and flicked them all away. More than a dozen Shangjuanzong elders who had been immersed in Yanxian for countless years, all flew out, smashed the door of the palace heavily, and then rolled into the hall. Chapter 50-57. The facade of the quaint and solemn hall was smashed with dozens of holes, which was ridiculous and funny. More than a dozen elders Yanxian, all turned into a ground gourd. They didn't even have time to release Yanli. They were lying like old dogs in the hall. Dead silence, silent dead silence. Nearly 1,000 disciples who came to the great hall of Shangzhenzong all had a panoramic view of this scene, completely dumbfounded. Their elders, who are highly respected and unfathomable in strength, are actually drawn into a gourd? Gu Ting was dumbfounded, and even blinked hard, trying to see if it was an illusion. This is too unimaginable. With just a slap, more than a dozen immortals flew away. Looking around, except Dian immortals, I am afraid that even quasi-Dian immortals can't do it. But right now this scene actually happened. Zhuzi looking for death. The 13 elders of Shangjuanzong rushed out of the hall and blasted towards Jian Wushuang, headed by the long-bearded old man. At this moment, time seemed to stagnate, and the perception of every cultivator and disciple present seemed to slow down. Only Jian Wushuang, his actions remained the same. He stepped up one step at a time. Seeing the elders who came from all directions, he seemed uninterested. But he still raised his hand, feel free. Sword intent. Puff! A clear tearing sound came into the ears of every monk present. Then the 13 elders snorted at the same time, and flew out again. As they fell to the ground, the colorful blood of the gods spilled down the jade steps, forming a blood path. The 13 elders and 13 Yanxian all had their right arms abolished at that moment. Divine blood flowed from their broken arms, dyed with red jade steps. Only fear was left in their eyes, holding the broken arm and backing continuously. Jian Wushuang, who was wearing a tooth-white uniform, still did not get a trace of blood stains, and moved forward slowly, climbing up the steps. I will give you one last chance. Should I die here for unknown reasons, or let your sect master come out? Jian Wushuang said quietly, without any waves. The headed long-bearded old man was holding his broken arm, his face pale. Junior, do you know this is an enemy of my entire Shangjuanzong? So what? He raised his brow. Chen Qing, here comes the sword. Come. On the square. Chen Qing laughed and drew out the real sword from his waist, and threw it at Jian Wushuang. Zheng Dash, the true sword, screamed, broke through the clouds and mist, and fell straight into his hands. As if seeing his intention, the long-bearded old man trembled in his heart, and lost his voice. No. But it was too late. Jian Wushuang used his hand to lead the sword, bursting out the most brilliant trend. At this moment, it seemed to be broken for thousands of days, and the fringe-like strength was flowing and blooming. All monks, Yanxian couldn't look directly at him. A sword slashed out, and the hall that stood up for countless years was shattered. Carved beams and painted buildings turned into ruined walls. Pavilions are broken into powder. The flow of order heaven collapsed and collapsed, no longer existed. One sword destroyed the sect. The fringe-like strength of Yin was spilt, and all the disciples of Shangjuanzong opened their eyes, and then their faces were pale. The pavilions, terraces and pavilions have become flat ground, and everything is gone. Chen Qing was extremely excited with his boxing palm, and after a glance with Chen Qiu, he went to Jian Wushuang's side. Gu Ting was completely shocked. His chest fluctuated violently. This scene was too shocking. The foundation of Shangjuanzong turned into dust under this sword. He has a strong intuition that Shangjuanzong is in danger today. Before the shattered hall, Jian Wushuang returned the sword to Chen Qing, and without seeing the deadly elders of Shangjuanzong, he walked straight into the ruins. His goal is to find Cui Jing, Wei Liujia and Fengshan. No one can stop them. Soon Jian Wushuang stopped moving forward, because there was a small and rickety figure that blocked his way forward. You can't move forward anymore, said the thin rickety figure, with a hoarse and firm voice. Of course you can. Return the 3 Yanxians you shouldn't touch. I won't go into further details. Jian Wushuang said simply. Unexpectedly, the rickety figure shook his head. It is no longer possible. The Shangzhenzong Tiandian was destroyed by you. Enough to offset the lives of the 3 Yanxians. Jian Wushuang sneered coldly. It seems that you don't plan to hand them over? You guys please come back. Otherwise the consequences will definitely not be acceptable to you. Rickety figure continued. Chen Qing Chunqiu do it. Jian Wushuang snorted coldly. Chen Qing Chunqiu responded, without any hesitation, and went straight forward. And the mysterious rickety figure also set off. His figure is extremely agile, like a ghost, brazenly responding. With 2 fists and 4 palms, the horrible force of power swept directly like a torrent. OM! Like the great sound of ancient times, it resounds through the sky, and it can be empty. Under the impact of Chun Qing and Chun Qiu, the rickety figure was carried down abruptly, without taking a step back. Then he shook his arms and flew Chun Qing and Chun Qiu tens of feet away. Looking for death. Chun Qing screamed, blasting out with a fist, piercing the sky with his fist, causing the sky to change. And Chun Qiu also started. A short sword with purple patterns all over his body, protruding from his sleeve, and stabbed forward fiercely. This is the full blow of the 2 pinnacles. Rickety figure stood in place, did not evade, chose to resist the blow hard. Boom! The ruins and broken walls were instantly shattered into powder, and all the disciples of Shang Juanzong, who were present, were all retreats, and were scattered to pieces. The rickety figure backed 10 feet, cut a dagger deep into his heart, dripping with blood dripping on the ground. Let's go! Jian Wushuang gave a deep cry, before moving forward. You can't go. The rickety figure opened his arms and tried to stop. Jian Wushuang no longer paid attention to him, stretched out his hand to release Yan Labilian to bind him, and then walked to the depths of the ruined wall. The entire Shangzhenzong Hall, and even the plains, were completely disrupted, creating a doomsday scene. One sword destroyed the great hall of Shangjuanzong. Jian Wushuang did not rush to kill, but followed the Ryuro breath, and walked into the depths of the great hall. Does it have to be so? A low, Ryuro voice resounded from the ruins, with a certain bewitching aura. Jian Wushuang stopped and looked forward indifferently. After a few breaths, the entire space was trembling, and then strands of gray power appeared like mist, and then gathered into a black-robed figure. This black robe was slender and extremely skinny, and his face was extremely weird like a skeleton. I have no intention of destroying your Shangjuanzong. I just came to find my friends. Jian Wushuang said. Let them return and I will return. A long wind arose from the ruins, making everything strange. Chapter 50-58. Hypo was silent, his eyes fixedly looking at Jian Wushuang. You guys, are you here to prevent my son from ascending the place of Dying Immortal? When Jian Wushuang heard the words, his heart sank, and he felt bad. Say, where are they? If you don't tell, Shang Juanzong has one count, and it will definitely die miserably. The figure of the black robe is the sect master Qin Zun of Shangjuan, and Qin Tua is the son of his seat. Facing Jian Wushuang's yelling question, he turned a deaf ear, and his eyes began to show anger. All the elders of Shang Juanzong, the disciples followed the orders, and rushed to the Tiange quickly to capture and kill the invading enemy. Jianwu was cold. Do you want all the disciples of the whole school to bury you? It is you, Qin Zun said angrily. You are nothing but a little Yin Xian, and I can kill you by flipping my hands. Jian Wushuang was disgusted, and directly raised his hand, and drew a palm towards him. Unparalleled strength swept up in an instant, carrying Wanjin's momentum to cover it. Qin Zun also reacted, and suddenly raised his arms, soaring into the sky, directly smashing Jian Wushuang's offensive. As the sect master of Shangjuan, he had already understood his immortal style several years ago, and he was only a short distance from Dying Immortal. Facing Jian Wushuang, who was only the realm of immortality, he naturally didn't put it in his eyes. But afterwards, Qin Zun realized how absurd his ideas were. Jian Wushuang was uncharacteristically, his eyes rushed forward with a touch of blood. Its speed was so fast that when Qin Zun reacted, a heavy fist slammed his chest. A crisp bone cracking sounded, his chest sank directly, and then his whole figure flew upside down and fell into the ruins. Jian Wushuang's figure was like a ghost, and the moment Qin Zun landed, he had already arrived in front of him, and he slammed down again. The clear bone crack sounded again. Even if Qin Zun was a quasi-Dying Immortal, the immortal body was so strong that he was still inferior to Jian Wushuang after all. The dust flew up, and violent shock waves waved up. All the elders of Shang Juanzong, who came after hearing Qin Zun's orders, and his disciples were afraid to step forward. The blood is lingering, almost like a sea of blood. This is Jian Wushuang's way of killing, and only his way of killing can burst out such pure blood. In 10 breaths of time, a total of 10,000 punches hit Qin Zun's immortal body without fail. When Jian Wushuang stopped, he was already dying. The fairy bones were smashed to pieces, and could never be recovered in a short time. Slowly exhaling a turbid breath, he raised his hand, and threw Qin Zun like a dead dog from a distance, and then stared at the ground under his feet. Adding to the way of killing, Jian Wushuang's sensitivity to blood has reached an unprecedented level, and he smelled the unrest on the ground under his feet. This is the most central part of the Great Hall of King Juanzong, and it is also the place where the strength and blood is strongest, and Qin Tua's hiding place is very likely here. Thinking of this, Jian Wushuang no longer hesitated, turning his right hand together, and an invisible sword appeared. Then he thrust the invisible sword into the ground heavily. The next moment, the whole fairy mountain was shaking, and an indescribable wave broke out. All the elders and disciples of Shang Juanzong were retired from Baizhang again. Even Chen Qing and Chuanxiu could not stop, and were forced to withdraw from Baizhang. The fairy clouds receded. The whole towering fairy mountain was densely covered with cracks, and the pure meaning of red gold flowed in the cracks. Then the fairy mountain shattered, and turned into heavy rocks, and fell into the mountain stream. As the fairy mountain shattered, a mass of blood rose from it like a scorching sun. The blood was chaotic, exuding a weird color, and the center was a dark black that couldn't be seen directly, and even Jian Wushuang could not see what was hidden in it. But the breath that this blood radiated seemed to have crossed that hurdle. Along with this blood qi ascending, the entire heaven plane was infiltrated with blood qi and turned dark red. Jian Wushuang frowned, and he felt the inexplicable familiarity again. The blood qi gradually dissipated, and the chaos at the center was a figure. He was Qin Tua, who had his head severed earlier. At this moment, his whole body is covered with dark red dense lines, and in the void behind him, there is a round of closed-eye wheels hanging high. The aura that Qin Tua exudes far surpasses that of Yanxian, and truly reaches the realm of Dianxian. Although there is only a short line between Yanxian and Dianxian, It is an unimaginable gap. 99% of Yinxian can't break through. Only Yinxian with less than 1 point can ascend the place of Dainxian. The difficulty of this is impossible to describe. Jian Wushuang frowned. At this moment, he didn't care if Qin Tua was Dian immortal. What he worried most was the whereabouts of Cui Jing and the others. Is this the thought that Dian immortal can control? It's really wonderful. Qin Tua smiled slyly, then looked forward. With eyes facing each other, Qin Tua took the lead in attacking. With a flick of his hand, the chain of heavenly Tao constructed by Yanli was directly wound towards Jian Wushuang. The sword intent was brilliant, rising into the sky. Facing the chain of heaven and earth, millions of sword intents gathered on the front line, brazenly responded. Zheng dash, the heavens and the earth trembled. And at this moment the chains of the heavenly Tao were directly shattered, and the millions of sword intents were cast away, directly strangling Qin Tua. The dark red blood surged directly into a collision. Not only that, the huge eye will hanging in the void behind Qin Tua also slowly opened at this moment. The vertical pupil is cold, without any emotions, and some are just bewitching and intriguing. With the opening of this eye chakra, everything quietly changed. Whenever he stares at him, even Yinxian is directly lost. At this moment, all the disciples and even the elders of Shangjuanzong were lost, and then frantically fighting each other. Gu Ting was shocked, and he was almost lost, but Chen Qing slapped him back into reality, and watched this scene in shock with his face covered. Don't look at that eye. I can save you once, but I may not save you a second time. After Chen Qing asked him, calm and said nothing. After working together to build the barrier, Chen Xiu looked at Jian Wushuang's back with concern. This kind of bewitching power was too weird, and you might get lost if you were not careful. Once Jian Wushuang gets lost, things will probably become completely uncontrollable. Facing the bewitching eye wheel, Jian Wushuang frowned. As the great perfection of divine mind, he can naturally feel the bewitching power emanating from the eye chakra, which mainly erodes divine thought. If ordinary Yinxian is careless, I am afraid he will get lost. Are you confused enough? Jian Wushuang frowned, then raised his hand and slapped it. This slap with infinite sword intent, like a hurricane, easily cut the chains of the heavens, and came to Qin Tua's immortal body, and the huge eye will behind him. Qin Tua didn't expect Jian Wushuang to be deceived, nor did he expect that he would counterattack so quickly, so that he didn't even react, and he abruptly withstood the heavy blow. Chapter 50-59. The sky was directly shattered into a deep gully, exposing the void raging by the wind. However, Qin Tua was like a kite with a broken line, flying upside down thousands of feet away, smashing several gods and celestial mountains to stop his figure. Sword intent hovered all over the sky, pointing directly at Qin Tua. The eye wheel in the void looked at everything like a totem. You wanna die? Qin Tua roared, and walked out of the broken fairy mountain. He waved his arms, rushing out one after another with powerful force, entwining Xiang Jian Wushuang. Noisy. Jian Wushuang looked coldly, stretched out his hand and shook it, and immediately crushed all the entangled Yanli. Then, he rushed towards Qin Tua. With a heavy blow, the fist pierced the air, and all the blood mist was instantly cleared. This is a punch that contains the way of killing, enough to make Dian immortal even unable to bear it. However, Qin Tua resisted, his entire chest collapsed and shattered, and tassel-like strength poured into the void. He couldn't believe that a little Yinxian could cause such a heavy injury to him. Between Yinxian and Dianxian, that sky can't be crossed at all, let alone harm Dianxian. But now it actually happened. Divine blood spurted and the fairy body shattered. But after only a few dozen breaths of time, all healed. In Qin Tua's eyes, only madness remained. He has been suppressed by Jian Wushuang. Even if he is still passive even when he is in Dianxian, this makes him almost crazy. The boundless dark red blood mist condensed into chains, smashed from the void, penetrating every inch of the earth, the fairy mountain. The elder Shangjuanzong, who had been lost, and his disciples did not dodge at all, staring blankly at the void, and then being pierced by chains falling from the sky, turning them into powder. Jian Wushuang frowned, and the invisible sword condensed again, piercing the void, cutting off the chains. His mother, isn't this beast going crazy? How come he doesn't let his own sect disciple let him go? In the enchantment, Chun Qing was struggling to resist. It should be those eyes that are playing tricks, try to get them down, Chun Qiu said in a deep voice, looking at the eye wheel hovering in the void. I want to find a way. Chun Qing gritted his teeth and thought. The true sword draped around his waist was directly out of the sheath, carrying a million sword intent to cut towards the void eye wheel. The dark red eye wheel is extremely huge, almost dividing the sky into two. The pupils are extremely chaotic, and the bewitching breath is emitted from the center of the vertical pupil. Millions of sword intent, condensed into a huge true sword, pierced the strange eye wheel with a shocking shock. The next moment a treacherous scene appeared. The million sword intent stabbed into the eye chakra without any hindrance, but it was nothing more than that, like a mud cow entering the sea. Without causing any explosion, the eye chakra was completely unharmed. No, I'm afraid I'm in big trouble. Chun Qing's lips trembled slightly, as if foreseeing something terrible. Next, as if to confirm his thoughts, the eye wheels in the void suddenly trembled, and then a huge true sword stained with dark red blood fog shot out, returning to the original road and heading straight to Chun Qing. The knot of spring and autumn cut off the world. Run! Chun Qing was shocked and fled directly with Chuanxiu. Boom! The huge true sword fell down. The earth was shattered and thousands of fairy mountains collapsed at this moment. All the elders and disciples who came from Shangjuanzong were buried in the end, leaving no trace. With a panoramic view of this scene, Jian Wushuang turned his head to look at Qin Tua. You think never die? So what? The final result will definitely be your death. Qin Tua said coldly. In that case, it's as you wish. After he finished speaking, the invisible sword in his hand suddenly slashed towards Qin Tua. The void collapsed, endless sword intent galloping horizontally and horizontally. Qin Tua roared. The meridians above the immortal body rose up, and his stature suddenly increased several times. Immediately afterwards, a dark red treasure that shook the sky and the earth condensed behind him. The treasure is too huge, shocking the sky, as if shrouded in clouds and smoke. It is generally unreal. Only the hazy outline can barely be seen. Moreover, the dark red treasure behind Qin Tua was entangled by chains protruding from the void, restricting his movement. As soon as Baoxiang came out, his aura climbed several levels steeply, reaching an unprecedented level, and even Jian Wushuang felt the crisis. I'm the Dian Immortal, and what are you? Qin Tua roared. His 5 fingers stretched out, and hundreds of millions of threads of blood burst out suddenly. Facing the glow that covered the sky, Jian Wushuang walked forward with his hand holding his hand, his eyes indifferent. His whole body has been quietly covered with a light golden glow, easily resisting the blood glow, like a needle like a sword. Qin Tua was secretly surprised. Although he had already reached the realm of Dian Immortal, Jian Wushuang's calmness and determination still made him palpitate inexplicably. Therefore, he decided to make a move, and the dark red treasure behind the chain was restored. Baoxiang raised his arm, covering Jian Wushuang with a palm large enough to cover the sky. The tremor of the void seemed to be unable to bear this kind of power, and might collapse at any time. Rumble! The giant sound pierced the wilds, and the red gold and the dark red collided, and the impact that broke out directly cleared the void, making the entire celestial plane unbearable, and beginning to be fragmented. The palm that the dark red treasure smashed was also shattered, and an extremely eye-catching figure resembling the stars of the big sun came to Qin Tua's face in a flash. Yijing was too fast, and when he reacted, Jian Wushuang was already standing in front of him. How about Dian Immortal? Along with this indifferent voice fell the coldness of a sword penetrating the fairy body. Qin Tua only felt a burst of unspeakable pain spread all over the limbs, and then he looked down at his chest subconsciously. At the mouth of the heart, an invisible sword was completely submerged, and the blood spewed out. It is an unimaginable scene, to cut off the body of Dian Immortal, with the power of immortality. Qin Tua wanted to fight back, but found that he couldn't do it even with a single finger. His own power seemed to have found a catharsis, madly used from the broken heart. But Jian Wushuang's eyes were still calm and cold, as if killing a dying immortal was a simple matter for him. Tell you, I will spare you the whereabouts of the 3 Yangtzeans, he said indifferently, his voice beyond doubt. The intense crisis of annihilation made Qin Tua horrified. He opened his mouth. They are all. He didn't finish saying this sentence. He suddenly changed his expression savagely. Want to know their whereabouts? Then go with them. Jian Wushuang realized what was wrong, but it was too late. A dying immortal. The power that burst out at the time of life and death was far beyond imagination. Qin Tua directly embraced him and rushed into the void. There, hovering aside of the I will, the huge dark red I will exuding a bewildering general trend. It is extremely curious. Chapter 50-60. It's like crashing into the water, rippling layers. Qin Tua pushed Jian Wushuang, plunged into the huge eyes, and disappeared. His eyes were round, and billions of dark red blood burst out. Under this glow, Chen Qing, Chuanxiu, and Gu Ting couldn't make any progress, so they could only fight hard in place. His mother, I am dead today, and I have to go in too. Chen Qing shouted hoarsely against his blood. The immortal styles came out together, withstanding the great pressure for a while. And then Chen Qing and Chen Xiu plunged into the eye wheel without any hesitation. Gu Ting fought a cold fight, and various complex expressions flashed on his face. After a while, he gritted his teeth abruptly. Wait for me, I am here too. Here, isn't it the inner world of the eye chakra? The echo was so ethereal. Looking into the eyes, this is a mysterious world. Everything is made up of extremely clear mirrors. At this moment Chen Qing, Chen Xiu and Gu Ting stand in the world made up of mirrors, with dignified eyes. Where do you think Brother Jian will be? Chen Xiu said worriedly. Don't worry, that guy won't be able to use the sword brother for a while. Chen Qing said relievedly. We have to figure out what this place is now. At this moment Gu Ting, who hadn't spoken for a long time, spoke, and his voice trembled slightly. Have you noticed any different changes behind you? Chen Qinghe was puzzled, and turned his head to look subconsciously. Behind them, 3 figures emerged from the world in the mirror. And after seeing the faces of the 3 figures, even in the relatively calm spring and autumn period, I couldn't help but explode. How could this be us? The 3 figures that emerged from the world in the mirror are the same as those of Chen Qing, Chen Xiu, and Gu Ting. And they are exactly the same. Even their walking posture is exactly the same. It is precisely because of this that Chuanxiu is instantly alert. There is weirdness here. I am afraid these guys have been copied. Be careful. Chen Xiu warned in a low voice. In the next moment, the 3 figures who walked out of the world in the mirror moved, rushing in instantly like a ghost. Be careful, Chen Qing shouted angrily, and then released the Yanli barrier with 5 fingers and halberds. But on the other side, the headed Chen Qing also moved. He also raised his arm, and exploded with a violent and swift force. The 6 body shapes started fighting. At the same time, Jian Wushuang, who was dragged into the world of eyes by Qin Tua, also encountered this kind of crisis. Qin Tua didn't know where he had disappeared. Instead, he was replaced by a heightened face, all the same as Jian Wushuang. He frowned and stepped back into a defensive posture. And that Jian Wushuang had no wave of brows and eyes, and between the palms of his hands, an invisible sword exuding a touch of golden light appeared. Jian Wushuang raised his brows. He didn't expect that this image could actually condense an invisible sword. The invisible sword is his kendo transformation, and the image can condense the invisible sword. Then it also indicates that Wushuang Kendo has also been controlled. The whole cards are known before they have played against each other, which is extremely tricky for Jian Wushuang. Sure enough, the image of Jian Wushuang has already released the sword intent when the pure golden meaning of Wushuang's swordsmanship rises vertically. Unparalleled Kendo, the first style of the galaxy. Star. A sword cut straight, breaking the sky and the earth. The void was cut open by a sky, and the mirror under his feet was instantly shattered. But it was recovering at a faster speed. Jian Wushuang never thought that one day he would feel the taste of his own kendo. Thousands of sky-reaching red golden beams burst, and endless sword intent swept into them. He also moved at this moment, the same as the first style of Wushuang Kendo. A more magnificent and wanton sword intent rises vertically and horizontally, covering the sky and the sun, and the sword intent is brilliant. The two collided, and the great fluctuations directly swept across the sky. Rumble! The mirror world began to collapse and shattered, tearing out the cracks in the sky. The sword intents cancel each other out and vanish. When the dust and smoke dissipated, they looked at each other. Jian Wushuang didn't expect that the image would have copied Wushuang Kendo's books without weakening the power. This is undoubtedly more tricky. If you continue to fight, I am afraid you will fall into stalemate and passivity. Thinking of this, Jian Wushuang planned to leave directly, but the image seemed to know his intentions, and directly released the second style of Wushuang Kendo, River. As the second style of Wushuang Kendo, the sword meaning of river is the strongest sword besides the sword meaning of lake. Hundreds of thousands of strands of sword intent condensed into a towering tianhe, swept down from the void. This tianhe was so prosperous that it blocked the void, and the terrifying sword intent made everything tremble. This sword is the sword of the pinnacle. Jian Wushuang stared, he felt the crisis. The next moment he also moved. The red gold sword intent was brilliant, rising from his body, quickly converging into a tianhe, and suddenly rushing forward. Two heavenly rivers, two rivers of sword intent, completely collided and broke out. This is the absolute sword intent, enough to easily tear any heavenly plane. Even Dian Immortal can never bear it. The speed of repairing the mysterious world in the mirror couldn't keep up with the speed of destruction. In just an instant the whole world fell apart. As the fragments flew, the sword intent of the river word dissipated, and the image of Jian Wushuang retreated 100 feet. Jian Wushuang was also quite uncomfortable, and the blood surged in the Xian's body, threatening to suffer severe damage. The pressure of Wushuang Kendo was almost unbearable even for him. The damage to the image is obviously more serious, and blood has been spilled from the wound. Death-seeking behavior, Jian Wushuang said coldly, and the image seemed to be fully restored in a short time, looking at him coldly. Then, a bright golden glow quietly rose from the image, and quickly lifted into the sky, turning into thousands of threads of red gold tassels. Jian Wushuang's eyes condensed suddenly, and his steady heart throbbed at this moment. The image turned out to be the strongest sword intended to completely release Wushuang Kendo. Lake-style sword meaning is a sword beyond imagination. It is unstoppable, unable to contend, and can only choose to endure a sword. Once the lake-style sword intent appears again, the consequences will be unimaginable. At the beginning, Jian Wushuang used his own power to cross-border to kill Chang Duoling, the Nine Heavens immortal monarch, who was already the third-ranked Dian immortal, and he used the lake-shaped sword intent. One sword kills 3 ranks already can't imagine. No matter how strong Jian Wushuang is, he is still an immortal after all. Facing the lake-shaped sword intent, he is not sure that he can take it. The radiant red golden flower has turned into hundreds of thousands of tassels, building a heavenly gate. The image of Jian Wushuang was wrapped in Jin Meng. His face was deep and cold, and a sneer appeared at the corner of his mouth. But then his expression suddenly changed, and an incredible expression appeared. Chapter 5061. The Tianmen, which represents the sword intent of the late character, is still being constructed. But the complexion of the image became extremely terrifying, as if it had encountered something uncontrollable. The tooth-white suit on his body suddenly shattered, revealing a symmetrical fairy body. Immediately afterwards, his fairy body suddenly expanded several times, swelling to the extreme. Cracks spread across his fairy body, and the blood of the gods began to spill. Jian Wushuang backed away. He noticed something was wrong and frowned. Could it be that he can't bear the power of the sword intent of the late character? As if to confirm what he was thinking, the image began to roar in pain. The dark red blood light began to drill out of his fairy body and collapsed. After nearly 10 breaths of time, the image shattered under Jian Wushuang's gaze. As the strongest sword of Wushuang Kendo, it also died with the wind, and even Tianmen did not condense. Good fellow, I actually broke myself to death. Jian Wushuang was thoughtful, but soon became vigilant again. This mirror world was far more treacherous than expected, and he had to be careful. Qin Tua must have not died, but hidden anywhere here. What he has to do now is to catch him. After the collision of the sword intent of the river character, the mirror world in this eye chakra has completely disintegrated, but it is still recovering. Looking at it, it was empty and silent. Jian Wushuang tried to call the names of Chen Qing and Chen Xiu, but there was no answer. Stepping on the mirror reflecting the shadow, he walked slowly. Everything is dead to the extreme, only the shadow follows. After walking 1,000 steps, Jian Wushuang stopped his figure and suddenly said, "Is it enough?" The next moment, he stomped his foot suddenly, the mirror shattered, and a dark red blood rose up. Qin Tua looked cold. Tung Lin Shukong stared at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang didn't bother to talk nonsense with him. After a 7-star system lit up between his eyebrows, he directly raised his hand to call out immortal style. A bit of mountains and rivers. The sacred mountain suddenly rose from the ground and turned into a cage for imprisonment, and Tianhe swept into a chain and directly wounded Qin Tua. The sky fire came and burned everything. This is the first time Jian Wushuang has used the immortal style since he walked out of the Sea of No Edge. He is growing. Xianshi is also growing, and he has long been different from earlier. Qin Tua was imprisoned in the mountains and bound by the Tianhe, but he couldn't get out of it. Jian Wushuang walked slowly in front of him, waved away the burning sky fire, and looked at him calmly. Where are they? Qin Tua gritted his teeth. The great horror between life and death has forced him to bow his head for the last time. Seeing that he was still hesitating, Jian Wushuang didn't ask any more, but flicked his fingers and forced a pure sword intent into his fairy body. Ugh! Qin Tua roared in pain. The wisp of sword intent madly shuttled through the meridian. Every time it passed, the meridian was completely shredded, and the pain even Dianxian could not bear. Jian Wushuang did not speak, but forced one after another sword intent into his fairy body. The blood spurted, and Qin Tua couldn't hold on anymore. They are all in here. He raised his brows slightly when he heard the words, then looked at the world made up of Lingjing, thinking about the truth and falsehood of Qin Tua's words. After a while, Jian Wushuang's 5-finger halberds opened, and his force was released to blast towards the ground under the mirror. Boom boom! The earth quickly shattered, and strands of dark red blood gush out from the broken place. If I dismantled this place and didn't see them, you would definitely be worse than dead. Jian Wushuang said coldly, and then completely released his own power, crushing the sky. Even Qin Tua trembled with the extreme violent generative power. The entire diamond mirror world was on the verge of breaking, but in the next moment, a huge dark red eye wheel came to the void. The bewitching and intriguing aura flew away, staring straight at Jian Wushuang. Disgusted in his heart, a million sword intent suddenly appeared behind him, swept toward the eye wheel. This time, the eye chakra did not swallow and absorb, but let the sword intent strangle, and finally shattered into powder. Seeing this situation, Qin Tua was shocked and couldn't believe it. And with the destruction of the eye wheel, the world that was repaired quickly is no longer being repaired, and it finally collapses. Qin Tua's breath is also rapidly languishing. The independent world in this squares, I will completely collapsed. And they returned to the real heavenly plane. On the ruins of Shangjuanzong, Chunqing, Chunqiu and Guting were all surprised. Back, are you back? Then another bull-like figure fell from the sky and smashed into the ruins. There were two more plops. The two figures also fell. And they smashed into the back of the bull like a stack of arhats. Cui Cui Jing and Liujia. Chunqing was startled first, then ecstatic. Good guys, they are all back. Chunqiu hurried forward to pull them up from the ruins. After detecting that they were all asleep, and there was no major illness, he breathed a sigh of relief. Where is Brother Sword? Chunqing turned around and hurriedly explored around. Gu Ting pointed his finger forward, swallowing hard. Looking in the direction of his fingers, Jian Wushuang stood in the ruins, holding Qin Tua's neck with one hand, his expression indifferent. The blood of the gods was spilled, and he almost became a blood man, already angrily. Let go of my son. A weak voice sounded, and Shangjuan sect master Qin Zun stumbled out of the ruins and ran towards Jian Wushuang. But then, the way to go was blocked, and a long and narrow short sword smashed his fairy source. Spring and autumn took back the short sword. Qin Zun fell into the ruins and turned into dust. Jian Wushuang didn't pay attention to the situation on that side. All his eyes were on Qin Tua. After that, Qin Tua smiled. I really didn't expect that when I boarded Dian Immortal, I would fall into the hands of a Yinxian in the end. It's really ironic. After speaking this sentence, he fell directly, and the fairy body was broken into powder. But until then, Jian Wushuang was surprised to find that Qin Tua didn't even have a fairy source. In other words, his source of immortality has shrunk to a certain extent, almost disappeared. It is not like the source of immortality owned by Dian. Without waiting for Jian Wushuang to study deeply, a transparent diamond crystal, after Qin Tua's immortal body shattered, hovered in the air and slowly rotated. Jian Wushuang immediately thought of the Lingjing world, and the eye wheel that had the power of bewitching. Could it be? What is the connection between them? He was puzzled, and reached out to take the diamond crystal. Under the sunlight, each of the 6 sides of Lingjing reflected Jian Wushuang's face. For some reason, after seeing this Lingjing, the vague familiarity in his heart suddenly became stronger. But Jian Wushuang was almost certain that he had never seen this Lingjing. No! Is it possible that this diamond crystal is a bone armor with a pattern of heavenly characters carrying Master's message? Chapter 50-62. But soon, this idea was rejected by him. The form of the bone armor of the Tianzi pattern was very simple, and they all used some kind of unknown bone fragments as the carrier to depict unknown characters. Moreover, judging from the Tianzi pattern bone armor in his hand, the existence of each one was too old and barren. Jian Wushuang guessed that the existence of these heavenly character bone armor was beyond imagination, and it was very likely that it was farther away than the Wanggu era. It was precisely because of the record that the form of the bone armor with the sky character pattern related to Xianyi's news was too single that he became more and more sure that the diamond crystal in his hand could never be the carrier of words. But what about this inexplicable sense of familiarity? Jian Wushuang frowned, rubbing the six-sided diamond with his hands. Only then did he realize that when viewed from a certain angle, there was a vertical pupil in the center of the six-sided diamond crystal. The vertical pupil is very vivid, as if it contains life, and when Jian Wushuang casts his eyes, he looks at him. Almost while looking at each other, he only felt that an irresistible corrosive and bewitching power quickly cannibalized his own spiritual thoughts. Jian Wushuang was startled, and directly used Yuanrong's spiritual mind to forcibly offset the bewitching power. At this time, Cui Jing's urgent voice sounded. "Big brother Jian, are you okay?" He looked up and found that Cui Jing and Fengshan were all around him, all looking at him eagerly. Jian Wushuang breathed a sigh of relief. "I'm fine. It's fine if you are all here." "Scared us. Boss, you stood there for 2 or 3 hours. We thought you were going to break through," Fengshan said grinningly. "I didn't realize something was wrong until I saw your pale face." 2 or 3 hours. Jian Wushuang's heart was shaken, and he clearly understood the importance of this. Obviously, things were done in an instant, and 2 or 3 hours had passed in the blink of an eye. There was only one possibility. When he stared at the vertical pupil in the Lingjing, he had actually been involuntarily dragged into the illusion, but because his spiritual thoughts had been melded, the vertical pupil was unable to confuse him in the next step. Jian Wushuang let out a sigh of relief, and already had a vague understanding of the true diamond pupil in his palm. This kind of thing is absolutely impossible to be mastered by Qin Tua, or even Shang Juanzong. It is too weird. For some reason, the familiar feeling in Jian Wushuang's heart became stronger. But beyond that, nothing else is known. After hesitating for a while, Jian Wushuang still put this Lingjing Truai into his arms. "I really didn't expect that the entire sect would kill each other to the point of extermination," Chen Qing said with emotion. "That's good, we will kill the province." Looking back at last, Jian Wushuang took Chen Qing and the others around to leave the entire heaven plane that had been reduced to ruins. As a first-class superpower in the Great Division, the power of Shang Juanzong has covered nearly 15 celestial planes, and the children of the sect have also been cultivated in various celestial realms. But after this battle, the core of Shangzhenzong was reduced to ruins, and the elders of the suzerain fell. Shang Juanzong fell. Cui Jing, Fengshan, Wei Liujia, and others all returned to the six-day realm without any problems. For Jian Wushuang, this was just a small episode after he woke up, and there was no shocking battle. There was only one Lingjing true pupil that made him uneasy. After returning to Xiaogyushan, just as Jian Wushuang was about to investigate the Lingjing true pupil, Xia Audijin immediately came to Xiaogyushan. "No, brother Jian, you should be prepared. Uncle Yu is coming from the heavenly court to see you." After strolling into the hall and finding that everyone was there, the little emperor straightened his clothes and said with a serious face. Chen Qiu and the others looked at each other, then looked at Jian Wushuang together. Jian Wushuang was also slightly surprised, not sure what Uncle Yu meant by coming to him. After a moment of thought he nodded, then got up. "Brother, let's go with you." Cui Jing got up and said. Jian Wushuang shook his head. "No, I'll be back when I go, no big problem." "Let's go. Uncle Yu has been waiting for a long time." Xia Audijin raised his brows and smiled. Then, the two walked away and soon disappeared. "Big brother Jian is going to be no problem, right?" Cui Jing stood in front of the hall and said with some worry. "If there is any problem, even if the Emperor Zhen Wuyang is here, Brother Sword will be able to do well. Chen Qing said confidently. Let's continue to practice diligently and catch up with Brother Sword. Stepping into Degushan, Jian Wushuang has been frowning, as if thinking of some scene. He found that there seemed to be some kind of fault in his memory, and there was a memory in the middle that was blurred, and he couldn't remember what happened in the end. He only vaguely remembered that Uncle Yu was extremely powerful. At the end of the Sea of No Edge, Uncle Yu showed up and took him out of the Sea of No Edge. However, the memory after the borderless sea has become very vague, and it is impossible to know it even after careful recollection. Are some of these memories related to Uncle Yu? Jian Wushuang frowned. He naturally thought that his memory might have something to do with Uncle Yu. Perhaps seeing his concerns, Xiao Dijuan smiled and said with relief, "Don't worry too much. Uncle Yu is here this time to give you something that you left with him." "I hope so," Jian Wushuang answered. At the same time, he also had some worries in his heart. You must know that what was stored in the Boyang bottle was not only the true soul of the three emperors, but also his chances and trump cards. Regardless of whether any of these things were discovered by Uncle Yu or Zhen Wuyang, the consequences would be insignificant. Therefore, Jian Wushuang's heart was still a little solemn. When he set foot in the temple where the little emperor was, an old man in black robe seemed to have been waiting here for a long time, and smiled. "Little friend, long time no see." Jian Wushuang bowed his hand and in return met Uncle Yu. "You don't have to look outside, let's take a seat." Uncle Yu smiled, and then directly took him into the seat. Xiao Dijuan also sat down next to Uncle Yu and said with a smile, "Uncle Yu, why are you willing to leave heaven and come to me?" Uncle Yu smiled and said, "Of course there are important things to tell, otherwise, how can I travel the heavens leisurely? If something happens, let me hear if it's good for me." He blinked, slightly excited. Uncle Yu smiled and shook his head. "This time without your part. I'm here this time mainly to return some things for the little friend, the things he left with me." With that, Uncle Yu stretched out his hand and wiped it from his waist, and then a small green and white jade bottle was placed on the case. Jian Wushuang's eyes condensed, and his heartbeat quickened. This blue and white jade bottle is nothing but Boyang bottle. Chapter 5063. The Boyang vase can contain 3,000 worlds inside, which is called infinite. It is the companion of Emperor Yangjun, always worn around Jian Wushuang. All the opportunities and things he had next to him, after he came to Daanhuan, were all hidden in the Boyang bottle. Right now, seeing the Boyang vase again, Jian Wushuang stretched out inexplicably. Xiao Daijin's expression was also unnatural for a moment, but then he still smiled and said, "Uncle Yu, from the heavenly court to the sixth heaven realm is very far away. You must be a little tired, right? I've already prepared a good wine." Uncle Yu waved his hand, then looked at Jian Wushuang softly. "Little friend, this thing belongs to you." He nodded. "That's good. Now that the thing's returned to the original owner, the old man is relieved," Uncle Yu said with a smile. Jian Wushuang arched his hands in thanks, and quickly retracted the Boyang bottle. He added, "Oh yes, your little bottle, I haven't opened it, it's always in its initial state." Just after investigating, Jian Wushuang knew that the Boyang bottle had indeed not been opened, and the silky sealed aura still existed on it. He breathed a sigh of relief, then solemnly bowed his hands in thanks. Uncle Yu smiled and nodded. "You don't have to be polite, little friend. This is what the old man should do. You see if there is anything missing in it." Jian Wushuang didn't even look at it, and he tied the Boyang bottle directly around his waist. Uncle Yu joked, "It's already my blessing to be able to deliver the things that the kid lost to the kid's hands." But he became a real villain. Uncle Yu laughed at the words. Interesting, interesting. Don't be funny, you just come here to give a small bottle?" Xiaodajin shook him. "Did you bring any baby?" "You really can't hide anything from you," Uncle Yu said helplessly. "Of course I brought you a baby. Take it out quickly, take it out quickly." Xiaodajin looked extremely anxious. "This time, the baby is not ordinary." Uncle Yu seemed quite mysterious. He stretched out his hand and brushed it casually, and suddenly a palm-sized jade box fell on the case. Jian Wushuang's eyes moved slightly, and he roughly guessed what was in the jade box. The little emperor couldn't wait to open the lid of the box, and the hall was full of glory, and the colorful shadows rose. The extremely strong medicinal scent has almost condensed into substance, and the smell is refreshing. Inside the jade box, there are 2 pills of pills. The pill is almost transparent, and the supreme luck inside it is like traveling with the clouds rising and spinning. At a glance, Jian Wushuang understood that these 2 pills must be Zhen Weiyang's work. Even the value of these 2 pills is higher than that of Emperor Lu Crow's Emperor Pill, because he felt that the air luck contained in these 2 pills had already exceeded the power of evolving immortals and reached a level of another. "May I ask, who can condense Daangxian's luck into a pill?" "Only the Emperor." Opening the jade box, after seeing that the contents of the box were pills, Xiao Dijuan couldn't hide his loss in his eyes. This is nothing unusual. The only person who can despise pills of this level is probably Xiaodajin. Ordinary Yanxian, even if the aptitude is too mediocre, as long as you take one, you will definitely be promoted to Dayanxian within a year. This is how terrifying these 2 pills are right now. Uncle Yu smiled and said, "Yenner, just try and leave the rest to." Without finishing a sentence, Xiao Dijuan directly raised his head and ate beans, swallowing 2 pills in his mouth. "Eat it, it seems to have no effect." Xiaodajin rubbed his stomach and raised his eyebrows to look at Uncle Yu. Indeed, when the 2 pills fell, the shocking scene that should have appeared did not appear, and even a little mysterious change did not appear. It was like a mud cow entering the sea without a trace. Who made you eat it all?" Uncle Yes' eyes twitched. "In those 2 pills, there is one Wushuang little friend." Xiaodajin's eyes widened. "Ah? Why didn't you say it earlier? Is it possible that you want me to vomit?" Uncle Yu smiled bitterly. Your temper is always so eager." He scratched his head. "I am not to blame, Uncle Yu, you didn't explain it." Immediately afterwards, Uncle Yu looked at Jian Wushuang with an apologetic expression. "Little friend Wushuang, this matter is the old man's fault. In the future, I will ask the emperor to give you another one." Jian Wushuang heard the words and hurriedly shook his head. "Uncle Yu, absolutely no need. I have not benefited the heavenly court in any way. If I get a pill, I am ashamed of it, and I will never bear it. And the 2 pills are given to Xiaodigen. This is the most correct way. Please also Uncle Yu not to embarrass the kid. Uncle Yu said with some embarrassment. But this pill is a gift from the emperor, in order to thank you for protecting the little emperor. It's really not necessary, the pill is too precious, the kid can't bear it. Jian Wushuang shook his head extremely firmly. How he didn't understand that the importance of this pill could make Yanxian inevitably join Dianxian. It was crazy. Once he took this pill, he would have inherited the love of heaven, and this love was too heavy, he would never go back. From the present point of view, the 2 pills were eaten by Xiao Dijuan, but it was a better way to deal with it. Uncle Yu wanted to say more, but Xiao Dijuan said, "Okay, Uncle Yu, don't worry about it anymore. It's a big deal to send another one in the future. The top priority at the moment is to go back to the heaven." He couldn't laugh or cry when he heard the words. Good boy, am I just so unwelcome? After a long time, Uncle Yu left. In the huge temple, only Jian Wushuang and Xiao Dijuan remained. Finally gone now. Xiaodigen breathed a sigh of relief, then raised his eyebrows as he watched him. What's the matter? Jian Wushuang was puzzled. Next, Xiao Dijuan's actions made his eyes wide open. He stretched out his hand and wiped it into his mouth, and the 2 pills, which contained the supreme fortune, fell into his palm again. Didn't you eat them all? Jian Wushuang asked in shock. Xiaodigen smiled triumphantly. How is it possible? You don't know the condition of my body. For me, this kind of pill will have no effect even if I take 1,000 pills. So, I pretended to eat it and hid it in my mouth. After he finished speaking, he stretched out his hand and placed the 2 pills directly in Jian's hands. Rather than let me waste it, it's better to give it to you. Looking at the 2 pills of luck in his hands, Jian Wushuang still sent them resolutely. But Xiao Dijuan is more determined than him. If you don't accept it, then please throw away this pill. To me, these things are just useless garbage. But Jian Wushuang swallowed the words that came to his lips, leaving only a sigh. If you like Wandao Sword Sovereign, please collect it. Wandao Sword Sovereign has the fastest update speed. Chapter 50-64. In fact, what he really wanted to say was that these two pills, which were supreme for the common immortality, had little effect on him. Because Jian Wushuang is basically certain now, his upper limit is Yanxian. As for Dian Immortal, and even the Emperor's position, almost all have no chance with him. Therefore, he couldn't bear the two supreme pills that contained the luck of Dian Immortal. But he couldn't say all these things, he could only smile bitterly while holding these two pills. I think I will see a Dian Immortal soon, Xiaodajan said with a smile. Jian Wushuang smiled bitterly. I think it's not that easy. Xiaodajan is not commenting on this. After leaving Degyushan and Jian Wushuang returned to Xiaogyushan, Cui Jing and others all surrounded him. Big brother Jian, how about it? Is it from heaven? Did you give me some amazing baby? Faced with these questions, Jian Wushuang patiently answered them one by one. And of course the two pills were also said. No, there is such a pill. Cui Jing was completely shocked. Not only Cui Jing, but Chen Qing and others were also shocked. The pill that can make Yanxian inevitably promote to Dianxian actually has it. Chen Qing murmured in shock. Good guy. If this is placed in the eternal unparalleled, I am afraid the entire force of the big division will fight for it. No, this matter cannot be spread, only you can know it. Jian Wushuang said seriously. Upon his reminder, Chen Qing and others realized the seriousness of it. If the news of this kind of Dan Maru spreads out, I am afraid that countless universes will be shaken by it. And Wangu Wushuang is just an auction house, and cannot resist too many variables. Therefore this matter must not be spread. Immediately afterwards, Jian Wushuang waved his hand, and placed the two pills on the case. These are the two pills. I keep them useless. Any one of you needs to pick them up. Chen Qing, Chen Qiu, Cui Jing, Feng Shan and Wei Liujia all looked at each other, and then shook their heads tacitly at the same time. Brother Sword, we don't use this pill. It's not a waste if you use it. Chen Qing said with a smile. Chen Qiu also nodded. Brother Jian, Brother Chen is right. In the past 2,000 years, the few of us only took D-pin pills. No less than a few hundred pills. The medicinal effects are accumulated in the body, enough to support our breakthrough. Yes, you should take this pill, the boss. I'm afraid I can't stand the medicine. Cui Jing waved his hand and said, Fengshan Dazhang is gearing up. I never take medicine in Fengshan, and I am most concerned about the success of everything. Ibit, Wei Liujia said with a smile. Jian Wushuang smiled bitterly. How he didn't know what they were thinking. Brother Sword, try to break through again. Maybe this is an opportunity, Chen Qing said sincerely. I look forward to where you will grow when you become Dian Immortal. Chen Qiu said with a smile. Yes, Brother Jian, you will grow up soon, but Wu Gu Wushuang still needs you to cover it. Jian Wushuang shook his head simply. At least for a short time. I won't try to break through the realm of Dian Immortal again. I have more important things to do. These two pills are placed in the hall, and whoever has the first opportunity to make a breakthrough at that time must take one. Remember, only if you continue to be strong can you gain a foothold in the boundless universe. At this moment, Chen Qing, Chen Qiu, Cui Jing, Fengshan, and Wei Liujia all nodded solemnly. It was precisely because they were not strong enough that Qin Tua led him by the nose, and almost suffered irreparable damage. Immediately afterwards, Cui Jingdao. Boss, there are still important things to do. What are you talking about? You won't be leaving again, right? Jian Wushuang shook his head and smiled. Don't leave now, take a good rest and feel for a while before talking. Chen Qing, Chen Qiu and others looked at each other, and then showed a smirk. If that's the case, let's drink stubbornly for 10 days and 10 nights. It's not so good, my injury seems to have not fully recovered. The long breeze passed by, and the temple stood forever. At this moment, Jian Wushuang was lying on his back on the top of the eaves of the temple, holding a domino in his left hand, staring in a dream. Nearly 20,000 years have passed since the first Tianzi pattern bone armor was obtained. And in these nearly 20,000 years, so many things have happened, so that he didn't even have time to find and unlock the bone armor of the sky. But now, everything has come to an end for the time being, except that Di Qing is still missing. Jian Wushuang has time to find and unlock the secret of the heavenly character bone armor. Now in his hands, he holds 2 bone armors with the sky pattern related to Master Xuani, and there is also a known bone armor in the hands of Yinling Empress. A total of 3 bone armors were not enough to reveal too much useful information. Jian Wushuang guessed that these heavenly character pattern bone armors would never be less than 10. But now that he wants to gather these heavenly characters and bones, it is no different from fantasy. Therefore, Jian Wushuang planned to start with the ciphertext on the known bones and armors in his hands. The ciphertext on this bone armor is too old and barren, can't comprehend it by himself. Therefore, Jian Wushuang immediately thought of that brief conversation with Xiaodigen. It can be said that there are very few difficult and obscure ciphertexts in the entire Big Division domain, not to mention this kind of text that surpasses the ancient Baron. But there are always exceptions to everything. The first-class master craftsman in Desiyu, Su Tua, who lives in the Sansuan mountain, loves casting the most precious treasures, and studies difficult and obscure ciphertexts. In this regard, Jian Wushuang felt that he could find the craftsman Su Tua to try. He had already begun to plan to cultivate for a period of time, before leaving for Sansuan Mountain. Just as Jian Wushuang was thinking about it, Cui Jing's words pulled him into reality. "Hey, brother Jian, when did you have this bracelet on your wrist? Why haven't I seen it before?" Hearing this, he subconsciously looked at his wrist, only to find that he didn't know when he was wearing a bracelet between his left wrist. "Why don't I remember having this bracelet before?" Jian Wushuang was also surprised. The bracelet on his wrist showed a primitive meaning, depicting the water pattern of the mountains, magnificent and majestic. After a moment of contemplation, he began to prepare to remove the bracelet. But soon he discovered that this bracelet is not an extraordinary thing, and it contains breathtaking imprisoning power. "Is it young Master Yan, or uncle you brought it to me?" Jian Wushuang frowned in thought, but soon these ideas were rejected by him, because there is no fairy tale who can put a bracelet on his wrist without his knowledge. But this kind of thing happened. If it weren't for Cui Jing's reminder, Jian Wushuang didn't even notice the change. Like Wandao Sword Sovereign, please collect it. Wandao Sword Sovereign has the fastest update speed. Chapter 50-65. He had an inexplicable intuition that the bracelet seemed to be holding something. But what exactly was imprisoned he didn't know at all. No, boss, you don't know who gave you this bracelet? Cui Jing was surprised, and then lowered his voice. You said, would it be Xiaotigen? Jian Wushuang did not speak, but he already had a general judgment in his heart. Leaving from the borderless sea, Uncle Yu took him out, and for a while, his memory was fragmented, and it was almost impossible to remember what happened. And this simple bracelet was most likely worn on his body during the period of time he was in a coma. As for who did this, Jian Wushuang has already made a rough judgment. But why do they want to put such a thing on me? He frowned, and then, as if he realized something, sat up and started to sit up on the spot. The surging power, like a mountain like a sea, circulates endlessly in the meridian. Immortal style, strength and kendo are all missing, and they have even reached a state of astonishment, unlike the previous ones. Jian Wushuang opened his eyes and breathed a sigh of relief. This bracelet didn't confine anything he owned. It is precisely because of this that he feels weird. Since there is nothing imprisoned, what is the meaning of this bracelet? After contemplating for a while, Jian Wushuang planned to forget this beforehand, and only after seeing the little emperor, he asked him to understand. It has been rare for them to get together for nearly 20,000 years. At this moment, they all sit or lie on the eaves of the temple, resting leisurely. It is rare for Jian Wushuang to stop busy and enjoy a moment of peace. Then, taking advantage of Chuanxiu and the others, he set his plan to leave. Hearing this, Cui Jing got up and said eagerly, Boss, take me this time, take me with him. Go, it's my time this time. Feng Shan twisted his huge body and came over. Fair competition, fair competition. Chen Qing was unwilling to lag behind. Seeing this noisy scene, Jian Wushuang couldn't laugh or cry. And then he said sternly, It's all quiet, I'm going this time. I don't know when I can come back, so I'm afraid you can't walk with me. What you have to do now is to improve your own strength as much as possible. Only in this way can you truly gain a foothold in Dianhuan. At this moment, Chen Qing and others all stood up solemnly and began to ponder. Without exception, they pulled their thoughts into the far future and the broader and unpredictable Dianhuan. Dianhuan is not only an endless blue universe with the ultimate mystery to Jian Wushuang, but also to Chen Qing and others. None of them have taken a big step forward. To see you is too magnificent, countless Yanxian, and even Dianxian never walked out. However, such a big division is just a chestnut in the great development world. Even the spring and autumn period, the son of the former Emperor Wang Gu, couldn't imagine the vastness of Dianhuan. Therefore, they all meditated on Jian Wushuang's words, and at the same time they began to discover that outside of the Desai domain, the real Dagwan was. At this moment, Chunkius' gaze became firmer and firmer, and then he said, Brother Jian, as long as he arrives at Dian Immortal, he can continue to follow you and go to the wider universe outside the Desai area? As soon as this remark came out, the eyes of Chen Qing, Cui Jing and others also became enthusiastic. Jian Wushuang smiled slightly. Of course it is possible to go outside the wider and unpredictable universe, but what you have to do now is to raise your realm to a higher level and reach Dian Immortal. Dian Immortal, except for the Emperor, is the real supreme being, and he can create heaven in his breath. It is an indescribable existence. For Yanxian, boarding Dianxian is an unattainable imagination. You know the entire vast and boundless to see you. After experiencing the war of emperors in that ancient age, Dian Immortal is already scarce, or even less than the number of hands. There are even rumors that the upward path has been blocked and cannot be broken. But after seeing Qin Tuo, son of the Shangjuan clan, ascended the place of Dian Immortal, they knew that the upward path was not blocked, but it was getting more difficult. Now that Jian Wushuang wants them to ascend to Dian Immortal as soon as possible, isn't it just to prove this from the side? Only by increasing diligence and reaching that kind of height can it be regarded as the true peak. At this moment, with the exception of Jian Wushuang, Chen Qing, Chen Qiu, Cui Jing, Feng Shan, and Wei Liujiao were all nodding their heads. They all had determined their goals in their hearts, and set out towards Dian Immortal. Jian Wushuang's words not only motivated them, but also motivated himself to move toward a higher place. As we continue to move forward, new mists have emerged from those long-standing memories. Master Xian Yi, Lao Zun, and the domination of the Void Universe, almost overwhelming the Void God's Emperor devouring organization. What are their origins, and whether they have left footprints in this ultimate development? These, like layers of mist, enveloped Jian Wushuang's heart. What he has to do now is to remove this layer of fog and let all the truth emerge. So he didn't dare to slacken for a moment. Facing the only clue, the heavenly lettering bone armor, he must grasp it. After drinking at the eaves of the temple for dozens of days, Jian Wushuang left alone without letting any Yinxian follow him, as if he had never appeared before. And when he left, he went to find Xiao Dijuan again, and finally left after knowing the approximate location of the Master Su Tua's Sansuan Mountain. He couldn't wait any longer for the news about the bone armor of the heavenly character pattern, so he set out again. Facing the vast unknown universe, Jian Wushuang never backed away. Although the Daisai domain is infinite, almost all of them are divided into 7 pieces, corresponding to the 7 emperors under the seat of Emperor Zhen Wuyang. The location of Sansuan Mountain is quite mysterious and erratic. Sansiyuan Mountain does not belong to any side of the big division domain. It is illusory and cannot be found. I wanted to find the craftsman Su Tua's Yinxian. It was already innumerable, but in the end they could only return sadly. There are rumors that Sansiyuan Mountain is the most proud treasure of the craftsman Su Tua, built with supreme power. Even if it is Dian Immortal, it cannot be explored, let alone search for it. Xiao Dijuan can only tell the approximate location, which is also not very clear, and the approximate location of Sansuan Mountain, but it is precisely in a headache place. Domitian is the domain of the second emperor's son-in-law, and is also controlled by the son-in-law, who has the deepest grievance with Jian Wushuang. Although Sansiyuan Mountain does not belong to the Great Heaven, it is adjacent to the Great Heaven, and I don't know where it is. But even so, Jian Wushuang still embarked on the journey towards the vast nothingness. Like Wandao Sword Sovereign, please collect it. Wandao Sword Sovereign has the fastest update speed. Chapter 5066. Because of his first experience, he is no longer lost in the void. The void is vast, but the immortal rushing on the road is extremely sparse. Occasionally, the immortal appears, but it is just a suspicious glance at Jian Wushuang, and then disappears into the void. Relying on his own speed, it would take him not a short time to reach the great sky, and if he relied on the immortal formation left by the Wangu era, it would greatly shorten the time. But I don't know if the impression of the immortal formation is not good. Jian Wushuang stubbornly did not choose the immortal formation, but moved forward alone. The universe is horizontal and horizontal, all creeping under him. There are countless creatures and monks who are unwilling to live in each heaven, and these heavens are nothing but a shudder in the vast ocean. The sea shuddered, I don't know where. These feelings stayed in Jian Wushuang's spirit for a while, and then they were erased, and he continued to move forward in silence. Those who can move across countless celestial domains are all immortals. And not all fairy cultivators are good people. They often have vigorous cultivation bases, but are promoted to Dian celestial cultivators who are hopeless, robbing and killing them in the void. It was the same as those Yanxian and top repairers that Jian Wushuang encountered during the Great Voyage. Although Jian Wushuang is still Yanxian, his level of strength has long been terrifying to the extreme. Even the son of Sheng Zhenzong, Qin Tua, who was promoted to the position of Dianxian, was killed by him. Therefore, he doesn't care much about the danger hidden in the void. Today, even if he is facing the 9th-ranked Dian immortal, he is confident that he can retreat completely. But the less you care, the more the crisis is found. Hey, visitors here, hand over everything on your body, I will let you go. The slightly rough voice resounded, and then a dozen figures suddenly appeared in the void, blocking all of Jian Wushuang's path. Jian Wushuang frowned slightly and stopped. In the vast void, the solitary Yanxian is most vulnerable to robbery, and among these 18 body shapes, there are 7 evangelists, and the rest of them are all deep cultivation bases. These supreme powerhouses who had already stood at the top, but now doing this kind of activity, could not help but make Jian Wushuang disgusted. The head of the 18 figures, a rough-faced man, took the lead, with his halberd pointed at Jian Wushuang. His eyes were extremely arrogant, as if he was looking at what was in his bag. In his opinion, there is no other special place for the young man Yanxian in front of him, except for his temperament. Jian Wushuang, who looked calm and silent, suddenly smiled. Of course there is, you take it from yourselves, and I will give it to you. Hearing this, the rough-faced man froze for a moment, then was overjoyed and rushed forward. But then a thin Yanxian suddenly grabbed him, and shook his head slightly. Don't be reckless. Lao-san, are you stupid? Just a lone Yanxian as for this? The thick-faced man threw off the skinny Yanxian's palm, and walked towards Jian Wushuang with excitement. The other Yanxian also moved closer at the same time. Don't play tricks. Honestly hand over all the treasures, and I will let you go otherwise. The rough-faced man suddenly released his vigorous power, and the general trend was unstoppable. Facing such a group of immortals and Ding Xiao, Jian Wushuang's disgust was even worse, but he didn't show it. Immediately afterwards, Jian Wu turned his palms together, and a dark blue pill appeared in his palm. Suddenly, thousands of miles away, they were all filled with a strange fragrance of medicine. The colorful shadow, centered on Jian Wushuang, is extremely rich. When this pill was born, all the immortal and top repairers had their eyes rounded instantly. Incredible. This pill was beyond their imagination. Even if they hadn't seen it before, all of the pill exuded air. Fortune told them that it was a great fortune. All Yanxian became enthusiastic. Almost all of them involuntarily rushed to that pill. But the next moment the sudden change occurred. A wisp of sword intent that was so soft that it was almost impossible to see, floated up like a feather, spinning and dancing. Time seemed to stagnate for a moment, before all the crazy Yanxian, and the enthusiasm in Dingxia's eyes had dissipated. He only felt a chill in his neck and heart, and then he lost his breath. That soft sword intent killed 6 immortals, and 11 repairers within one breath. If you look carefully, you can see that their source of immortality has been broken, and cannot be reshaped. The heads with fanaticism in their eyes fell into the void, and then they were torn to pieces by the void wind. Jian Wushuang frowned slightly as he converged to Huamang. He didn't care about these dead Yinxian corpses, but looked into the distance. There, a skinny figure had escaped hundreds of millions of miles away. As early as when Jian Wushuang took out the pills, the skinny Yinxian escaped without hesitation, and had already escaped a long distance. "It's really good stuff to be a scout," Jian Wushuang murmured. Even though he said that, he didn't intend to let go of this small change. And the location where the skinny Yinxian escaped was also the direction of the sky. Jian Wushuang naturally chased it up. At this moment, wisps of cold sweat flowed from the sideburns of the thin Yinxian, and he almost tried his best to escape. He didn't even dare to turn his head, almost lost his soul. If it weren't for caution, I'm afraid he would be dead now. Now with 18 figures, he was the only one who escaped from birth, and couldn't help but secretly rejoice. But fortunately, it didn't last long. The skinny Yinxian looked back subconsciously, and by this look, he almost lost his soul. The face was calm, and while waving his hands, he killed 6 Yinxian and 11 young Xianxian, who had been in the top repair. At this moment he rushed towards him, desperate spread, and the skinny Yinxian felt cold in his hands and feet, and trembled all over. An unspeakable murderous intent quietly swept across. But this Sun Lung killing intent was not released by Jian Wushuang. Sun cold domineering. This killing intent instantly filled millions of miles. Jian Wushuang also stopped at the right time, and raised his eyebrows slightly. This is killing intent but also sword intent. Being able to cover such a wide distance in an instant is already extraordinary. Do you have to rush to kill? Can't you be softer? It was like the voice of 9 days falling floating, with a bit of questioning cold, coming towards Jian Wushuang. In the form of voice, countless ice crystal sword intent fell, and the potential could disappear. Seeing this scene, Jian Wushuang frowned slightly. He stretched out his hand, and the endless breeze swept up into the sky. When the two collided, countless ice crystals sword intent was like a mud cow entering the sea, and they disappeared in an instant. But the sweeping breeze cleared all the chaos of the void, making the voice in the dark nowhere to hide. Like Wandao Sword Sovereign, please collect it. Wandao Sword Sovereign has the fastest update speed. Chapter 50-67. The chaotic void wind dissipated, revealing a rather thin figure. He wore a long sword at his waist, dressed in a black uniform. His face was extremely clear, and his eyes were like cold swords, bursting with cold light. In the first confrontation, the thin body of the long sword at the waist fell into a low position, which made him very unhappy and somewhat unbelievable. But he quickly concealed his emotions and looked at the skinny fairy who was kneeling beside him, shaking like chaff. Then he said, "Hey, why is he killing you?" The skinny Yinxian trembled, almost paralyzed in the air, and said in a trembling voice, "No, I don't know, but he is bloodthirsty and easy to kill. All of my companions have died in his hands. If I were not running fast, I'm afraid it has already been poisoned. The bloodthirsty for no reason is easy to kill?" The thin figure obviously didn't believe his one-sided words, turned his head to look at Jian Wushuang and said loudly, "Is what he said is true?" So what? Jian Wushuang said quietly, "Good fellow, unexpectedly let this seat run into an unruly guy," said the thin body Shinshin. "In that case, then you pay the price you deserve." With the fall of this sentence, an unprecedented sword intent broke out, rising vertically and horizontally, causing the void to vibrate. Under this sword intent, the skinny Yinxian, who was shaking like chaff, was directly stunned. Facing this sword intent, Jian Wushuang's gaze also condensed. He felt a kind of power fluctuation that did not belong to Yinxian. This unremarkable fellow is actually a Dayan immortal. You know, the entire Dcu, after experiencing the War of Emperors, Dayan almost disappeared. However, Jian Wushuang encountered Dayan immortal one after another, and almost all of them were opposites, which made him very helpless. A Dayan immortal is nothing to Jian Wushuang, who has experienced the terrifying tempering of the Sea of No Edge, but a Dayan immortal who has a deep understanding of Kendo is enough to give him a headache. Moreover, only from the sword intent he burst out. Jian Wushuang did not dare to underestimate it. The thin figure drew up the sword, drew the sword's mighty glory, and directly covered it down. Jian Wushuang didn't want to fight too much, so he directly released Wushuang Kendo. Xinghe Lake Sea Sword Intent, the first style. Star. The unremarkable straight cut, as the beginning of the whole spectrum of Wushuang Kendo, is a rare sword intent focused on explosion. A sword smashed into the void, and at the same time thousands of on pillars erupted and swallowed everything. The lean figure was amazed, and he rushed towards Jian Wushuang, completely disregarding the sword intent of his body being cut off. Seeing this weird scene, Jian Wushuang browsed slightly. He obviously didn't expect the guy to rush towards him like a bull. This undoubtedly disrupted his thoughts, but Jian Wushuang did not back down, instantly adjusted his state, and took the lead. Wushuang Kendo, Xinghe Jianyini, the second style. River. The towering Tianhe, the broken void flowing from every crack, and then gathered and roared. Under this sword, even Dianxian would feel his own insignificance. What a powerful sword, the thin body unabashedly praised and said. In that case, I also want you to see the strongest sword. A more chilling breath suddenly swept through, centering on the thin figure. The void was directly torn apart. Then countless sword intent gathered behind him into a big day. The bright sun, which contains 9 red golden sun rays, circulates behind him like a golden wheel. Facing the majestic river-shaped sword intent, his thin figure suddenly raised his sword. What Jianfeng pointed to was unstoppable. At this moment, the golden wheel behind him burst out with the most dazzling golden light, among which 9 Qijin Rihue burst out, turning into 9 true swords, moving forward. What Jianfeng pointed to, even the Tianhe composed of countless pure sword intents, began to shatter. The 9-handed true sword turns into a hot sun, slashing all kendos. Jian Wushuang condensed his eyes, his heart was shocked. This is the first time that apart from Zhejiangxian's kendo, there are other kendos that can compete with Wushuang Kendo. As the river-shaped sword intent shattered and dissipated, the 9 true swords that looked like the blazing sun also turned into nothingness. Jian Wushuang didn't care about it, but stared at that dying immortal. The thin figure looked extremely excited. Happy. I didn't expect that a Yanxian would actually rely on kendo to suppress my head. Jian Wushuang looked at him without speaking. Who did your kendo come from? Or did you comprehend it yourself? The thin figure continued to excitement, apparently forgetting the original intention. It's not that I am arrogant. Those who can fight against my sword never exceed the index. I didn't expect that you can not only fight against me, but also crush me. It really is not easy. Jian Wushuang looked at him. Is that enough? The thin figure was startled, but instead of getting angry, he scratched his head and said, misunderstanding. It should have been a misunderstanding just now. Since it's a misunderstanding, don't stand in my way, he said quietly. Also, the guy you are protecting is not a good thing. Takes the fun of killing Shan Yanxian. I happened to run into me, so I just wiped it out. The thin figure was startled again, even though his face turned cold. I thought this guy was not a good thing, it really is. When the voice fell, he raised his hand and directly picked up the thin Yanxian who had passed out, and then unscrewed his head without any hesitation. Taking another look at the thin figure, Jian Wushuang turned and left. There is still a long journey before devotion, and he doesn't need to waste any time. After passing through the thousands of heavens alone, Jian Wushuang stopped again, and then looked back. I saw the thin figure with the skinny Xianxian head in one hand, and then followed. What are you doing with me? Jian Wushuang frowned, already a little unhappy. The thin figure smiled, and some said embarrassedly, I had a misunderstanding before. I would like to accompany you. There is no misunderstanding. If what he said is true, what I said is false. He said, it's all one-sided words, how to tell. Sword. Sword intent. The thin figure said suddenly and firmly. Your sword intent will not lie to me. You can use such a pure sword intent to evolve the immortal. If there is impurities in your mind, you will never realize this kind of sword. Okay, the matter has been exposed. I will continue on my way. You don't have to follow me anymore. Jian Wushuang left this sentence before turning around and leaving. He threw the head in his hands into the void. His thin figure looked at the leaving back, and after weighing it repeatedly he still caught up. This little friend, can you ask where you are going? How about we go together? No way. Like Wandao Sword Sovereign, please collect it. Wandao Sword Sovereign has the fastest update speed. Chapter 5068. The Vast Void, the Endless Universe. Even if the fairy yin shuttles through the void, it is dangerous. Traveling together is a better way to deal with danger. Little friend, I have to admit that your kendo is extremely good, but judging from your current realm, you still have to be more stable. The thin figure is quite ridiculous. Relying on his being Dian immortal, he has repeatedly approached Jian Wushuang. Finally, Jian Wushuang was a little bit intolerable. Don't you think to me now the biggest threat is you? You think you are wrong, little friend. It's absolutely impossible for this seat to be that kind of immortal. The thin body said righteously. Jian Wushuang didn't want to spend any more words anymore. He could feel that this guy was just a pure talk. He didn't know how many years he hadn't spoken before he kept chattering. It wasn't until Jian Wushuang had reduced some of his hostility that he shut up with satisfaction. But soon he sighed again. It's a blessing to be accompanied by a like-minded little friend. I don't know how long I haven't spoken. Have you been like this all the time? Jian Wushuang suddenly said. Doing things in the void of the big universe? Not at all. It's mainly because I like to make injustices. The thin body twitched the corners of his mouth. When Jian Wushuang heard the words, he couldn't help shaking his head and stopped talking. What happened just now, it's really... I'm wrong, little friend. You must not mind, in fact. I am still very easy to get along with. He continued. Next, in order to redeem my mistake, I decided to protect my little friend throughout the process. No need. Jian Wushuang said quietly. The lean figure didn't know what to do with this sluggish guy, but soon he became smug again and fell several feet behind Jian Wushuang, following him slowly. And Jian Wushuang didn't bother to care about this and continued to swoop into the depths of the void. The void is vast, and there is still a long way to go from the great sky. As he continued to advance in the void, he gradually let go of his vigilance and let his thin figure follow closely. Little friend, look at these countless heavenly planes. Do you have any thoughts? The thin figure waved his arms, pointed at countless planes like stars and said, showing a faint smile. Jian Wushuang glanced at him, but did not speak. And the thin figure didn't care about this, and continued to think about it. From the perspective of this seat, everything is poor, but the 4 characters are enough to summarize. These 4 words are into the dust to be born. As soon as he said this, Jian Wushuang's figure was slightly startled, and then he recovered his calm look. Indeed, how can he be a mediocre person who can compete with his own swordsmanship under the galaxy sword intent? The skinny figure can see all his changes, and he can't help but smile. The little friend, how about I take you to the dust? This time, Jian Wushuang did not refuse. Yes. Then let's get into the dust this time. The thin figure laughed, and then went ahead. And Jian Wushuang, who was about to go to the great sky, was also successfully led astray. The so-called immersion in the dust means to enter the mortal world and experience the most subtle breath. As far as Yu Yinxian is concerned, the mortal world is filthy, and its own powerful force is extremely easy to escape. Therefore, almost no evangelization will take a step into the world. But the thin figure is an exception. He doesn't care about his own luck and energy escape and enters the world. In the heavenly plane where there is no supreme truth, even sparse power to generate monks, 2 figures in plain gowns walked forward slowly. Of these 2 figures, one is Jian Wushuang and the other is thin. The bazaar is extremely prosperous and is made up of mortals who cannot control and perceive power. Jian Wushuang and his slender figure walked in the market, and although they had reduced their strength, the sense of being out of the dust still attracted a lot of attention. In the bustling crowd, the thin figure seemed quite comfortable. I didn't know where to find 2 cucumbers, and handed them to Jian Wushuang. After being turned down, he didn't care and started chewing. After I reached the height I wanted to reach, I stopped and went into the earthly world one after another, to feel the slightest meaning of entering the dust. All the immortals have abandoned the world like a shoe, but I have a different feeling. The lifespans of these mortals are extremely short. At most 100 years is a reincarnation. I once sat on a mortal mountain and watched them reincarnate for thousands of generations. The loneliness of life and death made me feel a little touched. Speak out, you may not believe it. I can ascend to die an immortal. It has a lot to do with the world. Throwing Guardi on the ground casually, his thin figure looked at Jian Wushuang. But I always feel that I'm still a bit short of fire. He shrugged. Perhaps when I really understand it, that's when my avenue appears. Quietly listening to the heart of a dying immortal, Jian Wushuang said, that day may never appear, may only be in a thought. I hope that day will never come. The thin body smiled. By the way, I have known each other for so long, and I haven't asked your name yet. Jian Wushuang. I am Nan Xian. After exchanging names, neither of them spoke, and moved forward leisurely. The bazaar is prosperous without a word. Although there are not many pedestrians, their eyes are warm and sincere at both of them. But soon, the pedestrians in the market began to rush forward in a hurry, as if to join in some excitement. Hurry up and go. Have you heard that an illusionist came from Fambang? It is rumored that the illusion is so complete that you can change anything you want. Let's go and take a look. Accompanied by the noisy sound, nearly half of the pedestrians gathered forward. Jian Wushuang and Nan Xian were also carried forward by the crowd. In the end, the pedestrians gathered in the depths of the downtown area, and finally stopped in front of a stall full of masks. In the center of this stall, a sloppy old man with white hair wearing a Taoist robe swayed from left to right with joy. As his figure shook, the bells tied around his waist made a crisp sound. Welcome to the spectators. The old way has been waiting for you for a long time. he said with a smile, then reached out and took off a white monkey mask on the shelf, and then fell on the table. In an instant, a cloud of smoke came out of the white monkey mask, and then a white monkey with long arms and a white body sprang out from it. The crowd was in an uproar, and they were all surprised by this scene. It is an unthinkable thing to turn a dead thing into a living thing, but it actually happened right now. Like Wandao Sword Sovereign, please collect it. Wandao Sword Sovereign has the fastest update speed. Chapter 5069. Even Nanxian, who is Dian Immortal, blinked at this moment a little surprised. He exclaimed in a low voice, "No way, what kind of illusion is this? It can be so confused." Everyone sighed. Only Jian Wushuang's eyes flashed with surprise, and he felt a very familiar aura in this veteran body. The familiar breath was extremely weak, but he was immediately aware of it. Jian Wushuang was a little confused. This mortal plane was just a low-level plane in the countless universes of the Great Division. How could there be an existence that made him feel familiar? What's more, this sloppy old way does not have the slightest fluctuation in strength, and it can basically exclude the ranks of monks. Unexpectedly, Jian Wushuang continued to wait and see. Accompanied by the crowd's uproar, the long-armed white monkey jumped off the table, and then began to cling to it, looking extremely naive. At this time, the sloppy old Dao dressed in Taoist clothes beckoned. "Hurry up, the monkey, come back and bring watermelons to quench your thirst." "Gigi," the white monkey replied, turned back and jumped onto the shoulders of the sloppy old man, then stretched his paw and touched it in the old man's arms. Soon, a melon seed was held out by the white monkey. It jumped to the ground in a pose, and quickly removed a small hole in the ground and placed the seeds in it. There is a law in the growth of everything, but this law is not unbreakable. Today I will break this law in front of all the spectators. After finishing the sloppy old saying, he stretched out his hand and waved at the place where the seeds were buried. Suddenly a mysterious scene appeared. Seeing the soil loose, a touch of emerald green vines broke through the ground and slowly protruded. This is a melon vine, but in just a few breaths, it has grown up from a seedling, crawling on the ground and full of greenery. Then, the sloppy Taoist spit out another breath, and the melon among the melon vines grew in the wind, and soon a green watermelon was born. Seeing this scene, the atmosphere in the crowd rose even more, and they were all overwhelmed by this miraculous scene. In less than 10 breaths of time, the change from a melon seed to a huge melon is indeed amazing. This old way is a bit interesting, even I don't even know it. The thin figure named Nanxian said thoughtfully, touching his chin with his hand. As for Jian Wushuang, his suspicion gradually calmed down. The sloppy old-fashioned laughed. Since the fruits are ripe, we must pick them. As he said, he bent down and picked off the only large melon among the vines. Look at the officials. This melon is not a common melon, but a golden melon that hides mystery. The sloppy old way said, using his hand as a knife, he cut through the emerald green melon. At this moment, everyone was looking forward to it and held their breath. Immediately afterwards, a ray of golden light emerged from the gap between the melons. Then, thousands of rays of golden light burst out together. Don't look directly at the light. Everyone covered their eyes subconsciously. When the light dissipated, one after another exclaimed, "I saw the huge melon that was cut in half," which should have been the inside of the melon, but was stuffed with countless golden melon seeds. The sloppy old man was very satisfied, and reached out his hand to take out a gold melon seed from the huge melon, and raised it into the air. This is a gift from God to the old way and everyone. Every golden melon seed will be in the hands of the spectators. Don't worry. As soon as these words came out, the crowd boiled completely, and getting a golden melon seed for no reason was enough to drive everyone crazy. Looking at the already agitated crowd, the sloppy old Dao waved his hand hurriedly. Wait, everyone onlookers, because the gold seeds are limited, the old Dao has to set a threshold. The threshold is that a golden melon seed needs 1 money to buy. The crowd was quiet, and soon became restless again. For a mere $1, only 3 or 5 steamed buns could be bought, and it was a great deal to be able to exchange for a golden melon seed. "I'm coming, I'll buy 10 pills. A strong man held $10 tightly, and exclaimed with excitement. Lao Dao finishes his sentence first. "For this melon seed, 1 person is limited to 1, said the sloppy old Dao. "Moreover, you must breathe a sigh at the coin in your hand before you can use this coin to exchange for a golden melon seed." He was still the strong man before, and he breathed a sigh of relief at the coin in his hand and handed it to him. The sloppy old man smiled openly, and after taking the coin, he gave out a golden melon seed. This scene deeply irritated everyone. Next, the whole scene was completely messed up, and everyone scrambled to change gold melon seeds. Only Jian Wushuang and Nanxian stood calmly in place. "What do you think? Is this old way of cultivating immortals here from the rest of the universe?" Nanxian looked at him and asked. Jian Wushuang's deep gaze seemed to see through the crowd, seeing the most central scene. "I'm afraid it's almost impossible to leave." The next moment, he set off directly, and an unimaginable strange wave burst out of him, like a wave, easily pushing the crowd away. Yu reading www.akanshu. Com Nanxian also knew that something was strange, and hurried to follow up. When he entered the center of the crowd, in front of the stall full of masks, Nanxian's brows were already wrinkled. At this moment, where there is still that sloppy and old-fashioned figure, there is only a white monkey with a long arm, looking at them with a smile. Jian Wu's eyes were sinking like water, and he directly stretched out his hand to draw towards the white monkey. The white monkey screamed horribly, and turned into a mask again, and fell to the ground. Let the old guy run away? Nanxian was angry from his heart. As a real Dayan immortal, he not only got illusion, but also let the caster escape. This is undoubtedly a shame. How could it be him? Shouldn't he be in the endless sea? How could he run out? Jian Wushuang frowned. Without any clue at all, Nan Xian said in a cold voice. I'm digging 3 feet in the ground today, and we must get him out. Then their eyes looked far away. At the same time, in the bazaar, an old Dao wearing a tattered Dao robes ran away in a panic. Because he walked too fast, it seemed quite funny. No, it's impossible. I must have read it wrong. How could it be him? How could I meet him in a place where there is no flow of power? In the constant escape, the old Dao thought to himself. He seemed to think of something terrible, and his eyes kept flashing panic. The battle was so terrible that he, who had escaped by chance, was extremely frightened even when he recalled that scene. As long as I absorb some more luck, my injury will get better, and then I will flee wherever I want, and no one will find me. As the sloppy old man thought, his footsteps became quicker. Like Wandao Sword Sovereign, please collect it. Wandao Sword Sovereign has the fastest update speed. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.